All right,
Obviously,
welcome in. Hey, we don't need
start
Brad
off by
Holmes in here. Hold on.
one of
All right, let's try that again. Welcome into the Rise or Grind Morning Show. Bit of a different intro this morning. We're going to be kicking it off this morning with, of course, the custom Lions song, Detroit Dreams. But first and foremost, what's on the docket for today? We've got Lions news and rumors. We're going to be reviewing Brad Holmes' press conference from 2023. And I feel it's important to go over this stuff and kind of take a look back. We're going to do section 1 today, which is 23, and section 4 tomorrow, which is 24. What are we going to flush out from these press conferences? Did Brad Holmes tell us the truth? Did what he said, what did he say last year, at this time that came to fruition this year? And we're going to have some questions. We're going to have some topics to talk about. But also today is the first Riley Road Report, so bear with us. It's a new segment. We're going to get through it. I think Riley's going to do a great job on it. And pretty soon we're going to have the Brimley Road Report or something. We're going to be doing something with Eric. But I also found an article that I'm going to get back on the horse again this morning, talking about the Eagles defense. Beautiful article written by Ted Wynn. Came out yesterday, and we're going to do all that and more when we come right back. Double check volume, fellas. All right. All right. Hey, welcome back to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is Wednesday morning. It is February 12th, and we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions in NFL news and rumors today, as we do each and every day. But first off, let's get started with Eric. Good morning, buddy. How you doing?
I am fantastic as always.
And anything new and popping this morning up in Brimley?
It's negative 14. It didn't snow last night. Plow guy came. That's about it in Brimley.
Wait, if it didn't snow, did he just pop by to say hi?
Yeah, well, he had snow to clean up from last night for the night before. Yeah.
And Riley, the Utahan, I think I said that right. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, fellas. How you guys doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Volume check for the chat. We should be all good to go. Actually, everyone should be set at least. Just let us know if you have any issues. Sometimes we have issues, but more often than not, we get them fixed right away. So hopefully everyone's doing good in the chat this morning. We've got Trace in the house. John Desage, Trace, hope you're doing well. Obviously, Riley missed yesterday. He was going to join us, but he's not doing the greatest either, so I can't appreciate enough his being here this morning. You know, I mean, when we're sick, man, you don't have to do this, right? But he's pushing through today. Jack McMurdy, we'll reach out to you today. I know you want to get on the show. I'll reach out. We'll try to set up an interview quickly and have you on as a guest. Kevin Barr, good morning. John Desage, good morning. Michael Lukes, John Doe. Who else do we have this morning? Mike P, of course. Brandy Coffee. Who else is in here today? Jay-Z's in the house. Henry Moore, that's a new name. Good morning. Devin Siak, or at least I don't see you in the chat often. Big Papa. John Weldon. Derek Lewis. King SJ, all the way up in Toronto. And anybody else that I missed, you know it's not by purpose. Jay Cruisen's in the house. Warner U of M Dad. And if I kept scrolling back, I'm sure there's a lot more. Estela Evis, Roger Chappis, good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, let's get it kicked off. So I'm going to stay on my soapbox for just a minute. I don't know if you guys caught a little bit of last night, which reminds me I need to trim the last half of last night's show out so it's not 2 hours long. But I was talking about the Eagles defense. And, you know, there's been this rhetoric flying around the internet, you know, content creators, some media people, but not many, talking about the Eagles front four, which I don't think you can deny, you know, the impact that they had on the game. But if you don't, I don't want you to agree with me. I never want that. I always want your truth, you know, your honesty, your transparent views. When you watch the game, the first half, there wasn't a sack until the 8th possession, which was the Chiefs' possession. There was 2 interceptions prior to that. Did you feel that that game was won more by sacks in the first half or the turnovers in the first half, and that the second half, where obviously the Eagles were able to pin back a little bit more, even though they really didn't blitz? How do you feel this game was really won? We'll start with you first, Eric.
Defense overall, just being able to hold Patrick Mahomes in the pocket and letting their secondary go to work. Listen, everybody in that back half, from the linebacker getting a interception to the cornerbacks just locking it all down, that's what won that game. I don't think it was necessarily sacks, more so the turnovers. You won the turnover battle and you locked them down. They had 23 yards in the first half. So to me, the first half of the game, that's the biggest thing, just locking it down in the secondary and crushing the can in the first half.
I would have to agree with that. Obviously, I would also add this to those points that, do you think if the Lions were healthy, if we had everybody at the end of the season like the Eagles did, do you feel like we could have done a similar defensive strategy had Aaron Glenn not made the mistake that I pointed out last night by sending the blitz? If we would have stayed true to our front four and just allowed them to win their one-on-ones, do you think that we would have had success against the Chiefs?
I think everything would have been different had we not had 2 practice squad guys out there that hadn't even played in a game for us. So
that's a good point.
It makes all the difference in the world, being healthy and not being healthy. And when I watched the first playoff game between the Rams and the Eagles, I thought to myself, and I even made a post about this on social media, I'm not afraid of the Eagles at all. I wasn't. I was not afraid to go up against that Eagles defense with our offense, and I was not afraid of that Eagles offense other than their running game. And I said, if we can shut down their run game, they can't do anything against us. Because
again, I think I would agree. I mean, I wasn't afraid of the Eagles per se, but I knew that we were going to have a tough challenge if we made it, to the Super Bowl with the team that we had. I knew that we were going to have a problem with Saquon. It's just, I mean, the last 6-7 games of the season, we were treading water. We were trying to get back to the shallow end, and it seems like our defense was drug out to the deep end with no floaties, no nothing. We were just trying to survive. So Riley, what is your overall take of, how that game was really won, whether it was a tale of two halves or I guess you just tell us, what did you think?
Yeah, I think it was the turnovers. Honestly, I feel like the swing point of that game was the Cooper DeJean pick six. And then right when Kansas City, and I made the comment to Jack and Rob, my buddies I was watching with, is like, if Kansas City here right now, this is where they would go score right before half. They get the ball back to start the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. So that's where they would start to make those moves. And then Mahomes threw another interception. And I was stunned. It's just so rare to see him make reads like that and mistakes like that. And I feel like, yeah, those turnovers were the big plays. I felt like the game was kind of over at halftime. And I never say that. And I would have never said that about a Patrick Mahomes led Kansas City Chiefs. But it just felt like those took the wind out of their sails for Kansas City.
So I guess a follow-up question, just give me, kind of a quick answer here. Had this been, well, I guess where do I want to go with that? Can the Lions replicate? I mean, do you feel like the Lions can replicate what the Eagles have done? Do you feel like we have or had the personnel this last season again? Had they been healthy, do you think that we could have replicated, I'll start with you, Riley, what the Eagles did in this game?
Pretty close, yeah. Yeah, maybe you go about it a little bit differently, but production, could we have replicated the production? I think so, yeah.
I think so too. Eric, what do you think?
Well, I think with a healthy defense, it's not so much about replicating the Eagles, but doing it our own way.
It's a good point. Great point. Yeah, I think it's a very fair point too. We had a different schematic toolry, if you will. We could have deployed a different scheme than what the Eagles were doing.
Because everyone wants us to immediately copy what the Eagles are doing. And I don't think that is the recipe for success. I believe in doing what Brad and Dan set out to do. Just stay on the path, keep the recipe, keep it going. It will work if we can stay healthy.
And that's another great point, because I think that a lot of fans, and again, I'm going to roll with SOL, and I'm not going to say that anybody's wrong in their opinion. I'm just going to say that I don't agree with it. That Brad Holmes has completely mismanaged our drafts, that Brad Holmes has taken the wrong players, that there would have been, other players that we could have taken. And honestly, it's just not very true. I mean, I say this all the time, hindsight 2020 is a funny game to play. And it's a fun game to play. But I think that you have to do what Brad Holmes is about to tell us here in a little bit. You have to look back after 3 seasons. And you have to look back then and evaluate, who did you bring in? What did they battle with as rookies? Did they have injuries to start their career? Whether he drafted them that way or whether they were injured in training camp. Schematically, did it all fit? Did the coaches do their job? And I'm going to say yes, and partial yes. I feel, and I will put this on, myself, that I feel that Aaron Glenn made a major mistake in this game. And last night I pointed out from Bill Barnwell on ESPN, who put out a really good article that I posted in the chat last night and also in the description, where it was the secondary that was going to get the award for winning that game. Yes, the sacks showed up in the second half, but this was a team that didn't blitz one time. They went mano a mano. They won their one-on-ones. And without the secondary, which I'm going to read from this new article, without the secondary, this game does not look that way. And without the linebackers, this game doesn't look that way. The front four can't do what they did if they can't trust what's behind them. And I hope I'm making sense with that. If the front four has to worry about the linebackers being able to fill the gaps and stop the run, and then if the linebackers have to worry about the DBs being able to fill their gaps and stop the intermediate passing routes, nobody can do their job. And what we saw was a very complimentary defense where the front four, they focused on their job. The linebackers, they focused on their job. And the DBs focused on their job. There was no mixing and matching. They didn't have to back anybody up. They just did what they were trained to do. We didn't see that with our defense for probably more than the second half of the season, because everybody had to blend a little bit. Everyone needed some help because we had guys on this roster that didn't start with us in training camp. We are down to our, 7th and 8th defensive end, our 4th and 5th, if not our 6th defensive tackle at times. And then also DBs. I mean, our DBs were depleted, but Aaron Glenn, he blitzed 54% of the time in that Commanders game. And Vic Fangio didn't blitz, but not even once. And that was that was a big turnaround for him, because as I highlighted last night, in the first matchup against Mahomes, I think it was 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, they got their asses kicked because he blitzed 51% of the time. And when that happened, the Eagles got torched. And so he learned, right? He grew, he evolved himself, the genius that he is. He recognized, look, I can't blitz the RPO. Mahomes has been eating these defenses alive all season because they're blitzing the RPO. Same thing I said about Jaden Daniels. Don't do it. You're going to pay for it. And that's what happened. So what does Vic do? He does the opposite. And I pointed it out, Riley, as you stated, last week or so, I was talking about the stats and patterns, and when stats and patterns start to align, maybe you should trust in the stats and patterns just a little bit. I feel like Aaron Glenn just got too cocky and thought that maybe, he was going to do what he wanted to do and it was going to work, but it didn't. It blew up in his face. So let me start with this article real quick, and then we're going to roll into a couple of things that Eric has for us. So this article by Ted Wynn talks about, I'll just read the beginning. It says the defensive system built to stop Patrick Mahomes did just that and more in Super Bowl 59. It says the Eagles defense embarrassed the Chiefs' star quarterback in what was a 40-22 win on Sunday, forcing him into the worst game of his career, which it definitely was. Trench mismatches typically decide games, but Mahomes and the Chiefs have been rule breakers for so long that even though it was indisputable that the Eagles had a distinctive talent advantage, particularly up front, Vegas had the Chiefs as slight favorites coming into the game. Coordinator Vic Fangio's defensive unit dominated up front. They pressured Mahomes without rushing more than a single time in this game. Knowing their front four wouldn't give Mahomes time, the secondary and the linebackers were ready to jump everything. And that is the key statement that I wanted to pull out of this. If the secondary and the linebackers are just sitting back ready to pounce and able to do their job, right? Able to focus on all the routes, able to focus on every of the 5 options that you can target as a receiver, well, they're going to be able to play pretty good ball. So they can match up. They ran a zone man scheme. And matter of fact, he goes on to say where Mahomes and the Chiefs have been able to feast on short routes for years against teams that sat back and played zone coverage with two safeties deep. While the Eagles played those types of coverages, they were aggressive and forced Mahomes to repeatedly pat the ball. I know you know what pat the ball means, right? So before he's going to throw it, he had to bring it back down, right, and retool himself, get ready again to throw the ball. And so that gave even more time for the defensive line to get home. Well, isn't that what I just said all weekend? And people are coming out saying that I'm wrong. Well, if this guy's writing it from The Athletic and Bill's writing it from the ESPN, and I don't know, maybe 50 other guys that have written similar articles, and Rich Eisen also said the same thing, which I'll bring him in a minute because you guys didn't hear it last night unless you were in the show. This is how they won. The linebackers and the secondary were able to man up, take care of their responsibility. It forced Mahomes to double pump, and because of that, the defensive front had more time. Patrick Mahomes had a little over 3 seconds of time to throw. And because of the philosophy that Vic Fangio put together for this game, they were able to win up front because the secondary and the linebackers were able to do what they did best. That is why I am not afraid of Brad Holmes taking a linebacker in the first round. I'm not afraid of Brad Holmes taking a linebacker in the second round. If the middle of our defense can get stronger and more adept at coverage, that also helps our secondary. It also helps the front four. However, because of injuries and not knowing where Lee McNeil is, I think a defensive tackle is probably going to get taken early in this draft. And I also think an edge is going to get taken because of the whole roster roulette thing. I did a draft last night where I took 3 edge, a defensive lineman. I think I took a center and a quarterback. A crazy good draft. I mean, I would love to have all of those defensive linemen. but having 3 or 4 defensive linemen as rookies just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You still need some veteran presence on your team to be able to teach these young pups what to do. And if you don't have a lot of young or a lot of veteran presence because they're off the field nursing injuries, that doesn't help them. Talk only does so much. They have to be able to watch and replicate. So with this statements and what I've just said, Riley, give me your quick rundown on what I've said and then jump to Eric.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good in there. The thing that stands out to me too is just the brilliance of the game plan that the Eagles went into that game with.
Yeah.
It's so unusual to see Mahomes like frazzled like that. But then I think about it, and the other time it happened was when they lost to Tampa in the Super Bowl. So good coaching matters. Good coaching is so imperative. And Philadelphia went into that game and they were ready to win. And yeah, would have loved for Lions to be there. Hopefully with all the horses back, we can, go in and have kind of a similar game plan, but got to tip the hat to Philadelphia for what they did against Kansas City.
Absolutely. And Eric?
Yeah. How many times do you think Vic Fangio watched that Tampa Bay Chiefs Super Bowl? He probably watched it 50 times and said, hey, they only scored 9 points. Let's do what they did. And I think that's effectively what they did in this Super Bowl.
Yeah. And I think John Doe just kind of echoed the same thing in the chat too. John Doe, I'm not sure what your statement is there. It says right with some emoji question marks. I'm not sure what that is, buddy. Anyway, yeah, if you guys have questions, statements this morning, we'll try to get to them. Eric and Riley will try to pay attention as best they can, and we'll try to get to it in between segments. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and post this article. You have to have a subscription to The Athletic if you want to read this, but I'm going to post it in the chat. Check it out after, and I'll also add it to the description so that you can follow along with some of the things that I read and the philosophies that I'm studying. And there's some really good information in here. So one coverage that I asked or have been hyping up for the last couple of seasons is something that Vic Fangio calls quads. And I have a very similar philosophy, but it's exactly what I envision the Lions to be running quite a bit when I asked for 2 linebackers in the game, just 2. So you're running more of a 4-2-5. And by running a 4-2-5, you get more speed on the ground. You have, a couple, maybe an extra safety or an extra DB, depends on, what your roster is looking like. But by running quads in this game, they were running more of a cover 4 style. And I think that the Lions need to seriously consider running more cover 4 this next season because it does help with the RPO. And we're going to have a lot of RPO on this next schedule. We have a very tough schedule. And I think that they're going to have to deploy more quads in these games. There's also some timestamps and some pictures in this article that really illustrates what the Eagles defense was seeing and how they were able to cover it, especially when, Mahomes and company were up in 22 or 12 personnel, which I want to say they were in 22 once, but 12 personnel quite a bit. And they were able to shut it down. So very good article here by Mr. Ted Wynn. Check it out. Links in the chat. Link will also be in the description. So up next, Eric, what do you have to start us off with with NFL news?
All right. You want to start with NFL news or Detroit?
Yeah. Let's go NFL news first.
Okay.
I think I changed the sheet a little bit on you, but
yeah, you did. So that's okay. But I have kind of a funny one. So the Jets have a new coach in Aaron Glenn, former defensive coordinator of the Lions. And the Jets told Aaron Rodgers an ultimatum the other day. They told him either no more Pat McAfee show or no more Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers chose no more Aaron Rodgers. So the Jets effectively told him that he could no longer be on the Pat McAfee show because it was too much of a distraction. They told him that he would have to be there for all of the off-season programs. And It's just to me, it's the funniest thing ever that he basically got cut because he was unwilling to not do the Pat McAfee show. So he wants to be the center of attention. And this says they had a conversation with him. If you were to stay here, here is how it's going to be. And this is coming from Aaron Glenn getting control back. Even with those stipulations, was it realistic for Rodgers to return in 2025? And they go on to say, I think that no matter what the Jets were going to say, Aaron Rodgers wanted to move on. I think he was smart to talk to the Jets and say, where do we stand? How does this work? And maybe if they were on the side of convincing him more, this could have changed, but this wasn't the way it was when they traded for him, when it was exciting. So basically they were reining him in and telling him, you know, you have to be here for everything. No more of this flying off to Egypt and doing ayahuasca and being on Pat McAfee every week. Either you're going to be here and you're going to be a Jet, or you're not going to be a Jet. And he chose not to be a Jet. So I think it was more on him than on the Jets, with the Jets releasing him.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers. I know you haven't watched his special on Netflix, but I learned a lot about Aaron on that special, and I would say that it wasn't as bad. But I mean, look, football is football. If you're going to be a part of a team, you have to put the team above all else. And I understand that mental health is more important than anything in this world. And he was using mental health, I don't want to say as a crutch, but I think he was using it as guidance to do what he was doing and making sure that he could have some time to himself. We also know that he said that when he's done with the NFL, he's gone. He's gone for good. He's not coming back. He's not doing anything in the NFL ever again. I think he's kind of had enough. And I think that by him saying that, that should tell you that he's not all in. He's not invested. And by the Jets being able to move off of his contract, I don't even know what the savings is or what that's going to do for him. But I think that it's a better move than to keep him around, because you just never know. Is he going to kind of bully up Aaron Glenn, which I know Aaron Glenn, just from seeing who he is the last 4 seasons, he's not going to allow that stuff. You know, he's not going to allow a 41-year-old quarterback to disrespect him and the way that he wants to run his team. So big kudos to Aaron Glenn, even though I kind of called him out last night. And I am glad that he's gone for one reason and one reason only, and that's because he did not evolve, from my opinion, from my personal take, in the last game of the season, whereas Vic Fangio did. And so for that reason alone, I felt it was a good mutual departing. Glenn will be fine as a head coach. Maybe he'll be a better head coach than he is a coordinator. But I also have to speak truth here that without Aaron Glenn's genius, because he did have a big display of genius this last season, we wouldn't have won 15 games. There's no way that you have that many injuries and win 15 games without him doing the right thing. When I saw him evolve in week 18, man, I couldn't have been more proud of him in what he put together. But then to turn around in the divisional game and completely shit the bed, that was enough for me. I'm sorry. I've always been a supporter of his. I've never thought that he was on a hot seat. I thought he's been a great coach. It's just sometimes you got to get out of your own way, and I do think that he's stubborn, and that hurt us. So, Riley, what's your take here on Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that, Will, because I remember I've talked about it. We were watching the Niners game, and you said the Lions defense is going to play totally different against the Vikings, and they came out and they did. I know you've always given Aaron Glenn a fair shake, and it sounds like in this case, he basically showed up and did the Captain Phillips, for anybody that's seen that movie, where he looked at Aaron Rodgers and said, you know, I'm the captain now. So it's interesting. I think Aaron Rodgers is well past his prime, and I don't blame Aaron Glenn for going in and not wanting that to be your quarterback to kick off your tenure as a head coach.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. So everybody watching this morning, appreciate you guys. If we can get the likes up to 75, we will get these ads turned off. We've got a late start this morning. So if we can get 75 in before 9 a.m., the quicker the better. If you're coming into the show, first thing, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, every 100 subscribers, my gift to you is going to be a mini helmet, and we're going to run it live on the morning show whenever it happens. We're just going to run it live. We're going to pick some random people. I can't always do the wheel spin because that takes a long time to set up. But subscribe if you haven't. You can earn a $125 value of a mini helmet, and then at 10,000, I'm going to give away two tickets to opening day Ford Field this season. So that's going to be the 10K gift. It'll be 2 tickets to the opening day game. Could be with me, may not be. We'll see. But we'll give away 2 tickets to the opening day game. And then we also have, or will have, a bunch of training camp tickets. So we're going to do some training camp day stuff with fans. And this year I want to make sure that we capitalize on meeting each other, doing pictures and videos and having fun with it. And then I'll have a gift bag for everybody as they enter Allen Park this year. So Riley, do you have any NFL news other than the Riley report, or should I move back to Eric here on the next piece?
Yeah, I think let's roll back to Eric, and then I'll hit mine as we go through a division here.
Okay, so this was an interesting one, Eric, and I think that if we go to the Dre Bly information next, let's talk about that one.
Oh, okay, I pulled up the wrong one.
That's all right.
I was going to do the Eddie George one next, but
you can do Eddie George. That one's even more interesting.
All right, so this is kind of funny. This is NFL news, and this is from Bears Wire. This is from the Bears. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, before the Bears hired Benedict Johnson, they did an interview with Eddie George. And Eddie George has leaked something, and it's pretty darn funny. So let's see. So with the 2024 season now in the books, the Chicago Bears turn their focus to preparing for the 2025 draft. Plenty of speculation has been made about where the Bears will focus their attention with draft capital, specifically with the 10th overall pick. Many believe they should go offensive line, and there's some rumors they might go for something else. As showcased in the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl win over Kansas City Chiefs, building a team inside the trenches is a big key to victory. After the Bears allowed a league-high 68 sacks this season, upgrading the offensive line is critical. There are also rumors flying that Chicago, with new head coach Ben Johnson, could look to add a running back in a year where the class is deep at the position and could really be a powerful addition to Johnson's offense. Before the Bears hired Johnson, they interviewed several candidates for their vacant head coaching position, and one of them may have released the team's draft plans. In an interview with Stripe Sports, former NFL great running back and current Tennessee State head coach Eddie George said the team had at least one Ohio State running back on their draft board. And he went on to say, I can say that when I interviewed with the Bears, the head coaching position up there, we talked about personnel, we talked about needs, and his name, Judkins, for Ohio State, was definitely on that board. So he's telling everyone that the Ohio State running back was on the top of the board for the Chicago Bears.
What was the Ohio State's, what was his name?
Judkins. Quinshawn Junkins. And he went on to say, I'm a big fan of Quinshawn Judkins.
Judkins. Yeah.
Jeez, oh, Pete, what a name. And Trayvon Henderson. I think they both have matured into quality backs. I'm glad to see they had opportunities to run the football. Once they were involved in the passing game and blocking game, Judkins is a grown man.
That's interesting. So, yeah. I'll say this. I think that Judkins is probably a middle to late 3rd round pick. And if that's the case, obviously that's not giving away too much, but still the fact that, that they have a running back on their draft board, and why would Eddie George come out and say this stuff? Like,
I don't know.
You would think that they signed some sort of an NDA.
Maybe he was mad that they didn't sign him as head coach.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's Eddie George.
I don't get it. I wanted to take a look at their free agency list, and so I don't even know who the Bears free agents are. I don't have it up right now.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, here we go. So Travis Homer, he's a free agent running back. Darrington Evans,
And they have
restricted.
Swift for another year or two, correct?
What's that?
I think they have DeAndre Swift for another year or two.
They might. So they might be looking for, someone to replace Swift, and or maybe they're thinking of moving on from Swift. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll find out. I mean, obviously, Johnson knows Swift. He knows what he's going to be able to get out of him. I didn't think he had a terrible season, but I didn't think it was a great season either.
Nope.
Interesting, though. I can't believe that Eddie George is out there throwing people under the bus. But so now go to the Dre Bly one. So this is kicking it over to the Jets.
All right. Let me open that up. Let's see. Got to get back over there.
Quinshawn Junction, Riley, what are you talking about in there? Quinshawn Junction.
I think that was one of the tongue twisters.
Eric was spitting.
I don't blame you at all.
I'm horrible. I'm horrible.
Johnstown Junction, Colorado, Grand Junction.
Yeah, no, I got you.
All right. The former Detroit Lions cornerback Dre Bly is set to join the coaching staff for the New York Jets, according to a post on his Instagram shared on Saturday. Bly joins former Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn's, now the Jets head coach, as part of the revamped staff in New York. He coached with Glenn for the Lions in 2023, handling the cornerback coach duties that season. Bly played 11 years in the NFL, including 4 seasons with the Lions, 2 of which he earned Pro Bowl trips. The Lions traded him to the Broncos in 2007, only for him to be released 2 years later. Though Bly didn't coach for the Lions in 2024, he's a part of a handful of former coaches reuniting under Detroit's former coordinators in Glenn and Ben Johnson, who is the new head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Okay, so what is he joining them to be?
The quarterback's coach, just like he was in Detroit in 2023. Yeah.
I thought he was, he was our cornerbacks coach, right? You say cornerbacks? I think he said quarterbacks.
Yeah.
All right, so he's going to be that's interesting. So did Aaron Glenn must not have learned his lesson?
Yeah, I didn't know why the Lions didn't have him back. He just didn't do that great of a job.
Our corners sucked that season. They were terrible. Yeah. We were last in the league. I mean, obviously this year we didn't have that much better of stats, but I think that when you look at the play and how, when Carlton Davis was on the field, I think that our corners and DBs obviously played much better. I mean, Kirby led the league in interceptions. I think that there's something to that. So, all right, we're getting towards the 9 o'clock hour, so we're going to get into the Riley Road Report, and we're going to do that when we come back from an ad here from one of our sponsors. And if we get the likes up to 75, we'll also get the ads turned off. Looks like we're about 20 away. So let's get it pumping. We'll be back here in just a few moments.
Every day, thousands of people are discovering YOOPERLITES, Michigan's newest, funnest rock to go find on the shores of the Great Lakes. Don't go out with just any light. Try the Convoy C8 from YOOPERLITES.com. It's guaranteed for life, and you'll find all the ones everyone else misses. Quality UV lights that are perfect for YOOPERLITES, with prices starting as low as $20. Please make sure to visit YOOPERLITES.com for all your UV flashlight needs, with the best guarantees on the market. Just what you wanted and not what you didn't. The best quality, the best guarantees, and the best UV flashlights from YOOPERLITES.com.
All right, Riley, you're up, buddy. We've got the Riley's Road Report. Let's see, what city are we coming from today? Is that somewhere in Utah?
Yeah, somewhere. It's about halfway between Utah and Grand Junction, Conjunction, Function. Junction.
All right, so where are we headed to? What's our first stop on the trip today?
All right, so we are going to do the NFC West. Now, I've typed up a little bit of a script here, so I'm going to see how I can roll with this. Let's hit play here on my script and start here in the NFC West. Now, for the first official Riley Road Report, we head over to the NFC West. And what better place to start than beautiful Los Angeles? Now that the NFL season is officially over, we have officials. We've got the official MVP, official Super Bowl champion. How about official leader of the league in pressures. Rams rookie Jared Verse led the entire NFL in pressures with 89. That's one more than Kansas City Chief Chris Jones, who registered 88. Here's the kicker. Verse accomplished this despite having only the 12th most pass rush snaps played with 546. Now, to put that into perspective, Jalen Carter led the league with most pass rush snaps played at 711. He finished with 75 pressures. The Rams did it 2 years ago when they struck gold on the offensive side of the ball with Puka Nacua, and they did it again this last year with Jared Verse. There was one player that we know that Will Rock called for the Lions to trade up and get last year, Jared Verse. Perhaps Brad Holmes was about to make that move, but the Rams grabbed Verse at pick 19, and the rest is history. Now, a hiring out of New York is further fueling speculation that the New York Football Giants may be targeting Matthew Stafford as their next QB. Outside of some tweets sent out by Giants star receiver Malik Neighbors that showed Stafford's jersey number and some Ram emojis, the Giants just hired Chad Hall as an assistant quarterbacks coach. Chad Hall is, as we know, Matthew Stafford's brother-in-law, and they surely will be having the conversations. I would have personally found it more likely that Stafford would have hung him up as opposed to moving to a third team, but Peter Schrager, who we know is close with Sean McVay, recently told Pro Football Network, quote, "I don't think Stafford is retiring, but I think there's a chance he might wear another uniform in the near future," based on what the tea leaves are saying. So the question is, where will Stafford be playing next year, and who will be the quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams? One last bit of news out of LA. There's at least one report that Cooper Kupp's trade value may not be as high as perhaps some Rams fans might have hoped. Adam Schefter of ESPN said the interesting part here is that there's a lot of money involved, $20 million and a $7.5 million roster bonus due in the middle of March. Now, the Rams are willing to pay some of that money. I think when you speak to people around the league, they see Keenan Allen go last year for a 4th-round pick, and they believe that Cooper Kupp is in a similar situation. So, Will, what are your thoughts on being right about Jared Verse and Stafford and the news out of Los Angeles?
Well, I'll say this. When Adam Schefter reported on Monday that the Giants were, in fact, hiring Chad Hall, and then with all of this nonsense going on social media, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, this may seem completely unrelated to Stafford, but then again, I mean, they're hiring his brother-in-law. I mean, that's Stafford's brother. And who wouldn't want to be in a New York market to end their career? I mean, it's a tough market, but that could also further Matthew Stafford's, career after football as well. So it's interesting mix. I don't know if New York is really going to pull off, a massive trade like this. Who knows? I think that Stafford would probably retire before that. But then again, my speculation could be completely wrong here. On Cooper Kupp, he has a base salary of $12.5 million in 25. It's actually less than Allen's salary of 18.1. But Kupp is also 31 years old, which is the same age as Allen at the time of the trade to Chicago last year. So I'm envisioning that this trade value is going to be very similar to Allen. And as far as Jared Verse, look, the tape didn't lie. I can't tell anybody enough that the tape is so important to watch these guys, and it matches up, with combine work or whatever. I saw what Jared Verse could do on the field. Last year when I was on with various people, I had them switching and turning their minds from other edge, early in the first round to Jared Verse. And that's because of the report that I came with. It was factual. It was data driven. It was statistical driven. And Jared Verse did not disappoint. I mean, they got off to a slow start, him and Fisk, but they really turned it around about a third of the way through the season, and they really put up some big numbers. So congratulations to Verse. And to your point there, I have a feeling that Brad was probably going to pull the trigger on Verse had he slipped. And then making that last dash move to get Terry and Arnold, I think is why he did that. That he was then thinking that, okay, everyone's going to fly off the board at this point. I've got to get up there and get my guy. and that's why he did that. So where are we headed to next? What's next on the destination?
Yeah, let's go to Arizona. So we'll make our way to the home of the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals are eyeing a contract extension for tight end Trey McBride. McBride set the Arizona Cardinals franchise record for receptions by a tight end in 2023 with 81. Then last year, he blew that number out of the water, bringing in a whopping 111 receptions. So he tallied 1,146 receiving yards, scored 2 touchdowns, and earned his first Pro Bowl selection. McBride is still technically under contract for 2025, but according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, the Cardinals, quote, hope to re-sign McBride and make him feel at home in Arizona for the long haul. A little mock draft news for the Cardinals. NBC Sports mocks Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolan to Arizona in round 1. The Cardinals have invested in top 10 picks in back-to-back drafts. They were 10th in EPA per play on offense and 24th on defense in 2024. Per PFF, Pro Football Focus, Nolan finished top 5 among Power 4 interior defenders in sacks and pressures last year. They graded him as their number 3 defensive lineman in a major conference. And I'm going to pull up one other article here. Now, this is a post-Super Bowl look at a couple of Philadelphia, a handful of Philadelphia players that the Arizona Cardinals could target. Josh Sweat. Sweat has already been linked to the Cardinals because he was coached by Jonathan Gannon, fills the Cardinals' biggest need on the edge. Milton Williams on the defensive line. Williams had 5 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, and 7 tackles for loss in the regular season. In the Super Bowl, he had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, quarterback hit, and he forced and recovered a fumble. I know you like Zach Bond, Will, a lot, linebacker. He signed a 1-year deal last offseason and was moved to off-ball linebacker. Had a great season, 151 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and an interception, 4 pass breakups, and 5 forced fumbles, leading to an all-pro first-team nod. He could be somebody that the Cardinals target. And then lastly, offensive lineman Mekhi Becton. He moved from tackle to guard in 2024, was solid. The former number 11 overall pick will now be a free agent. He had to leave the Super Bowl briefly with an injury, but came back, finished the game. The Cardinals need guards. Would they target this monster of a man, Mekhi Becton? What are your thoughts, Will?
So I'll go in reverse order here. I think that the Cardinals need to shore up their offensive line first and foremost. If they're going to target a big name free agent, I think that, a player like Becton probably does make sense, or a player similar to Becton in his ability. I think that they have to protect the quarterback. I mean, the Lions were able to get after Kyler Murray, and I feel like it's imperative that you start in the trenches when you're trying to build a squad that can, now go up against some of the best defensive players in the league. A lot of teams fail. They fail by building the trenches, and that's why they're never going to be in the postseason. The trenches are the most important when you're starting, either to rebuild or retool a franchise. So it does make sense that they're going to go offensive line in free agency. I mean, who doesn't want Bond? Clearly I highlighted him a couple of weeks ago, and then he has a crazy good performance in the Super Bowl. That's no surprise. Milton Williams is a surprising one, but not really. I mean, this guy, I think he was a 3rd-round draft pick 4 years ago, and he's really shined, and he's really been coming on as of late. And that's exactly why when, we talk about Brad Holmes and how he says, don't evaluate my draft for 3 seasons, this is why. Milton Williams has really turned it on. I hope that the Lions get their name in that drawing. As far as McBride goes, he'll be back. There's no reason why you don't bring back a tight end. I'm not 100% certain on the Cardinals' cap space or where they're drafting as far as how many picks that they have. Maybe they double up and add McBride, another tight end on the other side, someone that they can also grow with, keep the cap number low, especially if they're going to have to give him a considerable extension. So that's really it for me on the Cardinals. Where are we going to next?
Let's go down to Seattle. Seattle just hires Clint Kubiak to be their new offensive coordinator. Combining words here. Clint Kubiak feels Geno is, quote, tough as nails. Says, that's a guy I want to coach. I mentioned this adversity that Geno has overcome, and mentioned specifically that Geno Smith plays well in the fourth quarter of games. So he's looking forward to coaching Geno Smith. And then also Mike McDonald, who's the head coach, said of the 14 candidates that they interviewed for the offensive coordinating position, Kubiak was the one who had the, quote, best idea as to how they were going to utilize DK Metcalf. Always go through those mentally, thinking like, how would I use him? How are you convincing these coaches? What's your pitch? Evidently, Kubiak had the strongest pitch, so we'll see what he does with Metcalf in Seattle. And then there is a rumor that the Seahawks and Steelers could be one of the games that are played in Ireland next year. Pittsburgh plays the NFL's first regular season game next year in Ireland, and the Seattle Seahawks could be the opponent. It's unlikely the league would ask the Pittsburgh Steelers to play a division game in Ireland, one of their home games. So that leaves Seattle as a likely opponent for Pittsburgh. So we could see Seattle with Clint Kubiak, some bombs from Geno to Metcalf, all in Ireland, according to these reports here. So from some news out of Seattle.
Yeah, so as far as Seattle goes, look, I think that Kubiak is he's dreaming about Geno Smith. Geno is a good quarterback. He definitely doesn't have the wheels that he used to have. He's a good passer of the football, but I think he's nearing the other side of his career. He's what I'm going to consider a bridge right now until the Seahawks can figure out exactly where they're going to go next. I'm not sure where they're picking, but you know, if the Seahawks have an opportunity to grab a quarterback this year in a quarterback light draft, they might be looking to grab one probably in the second or third round. There's going to be some good options in the second or third round. Get one trained up. Metcalf is in my opinion a problem for the Seahawks. Quite simply, his contract this year, his cap hit is almost $32 million. And I can't imagine on any green earth where the Seahawks are either A, going to not try to negotiate a new deal, or B, trade him. So I think that I honestly feel that Metcalf is on the trade block right now. We just don't know about it, and or a new deal has to be put together. This is a team that needs to gain some draft capital as well as some overall cap space if they want to continue building this team and turn it into a contender. So I think Metcalf's on the block. I think they keep Tyler Lockett, and I think that Geno is on his way out to probably in the next 2 years. They'll find a new quarterback this year potentially. Last team of this division. Where are we going next?
San Francisco. Maybe that was Kubiak's pitch. It's like, hey, man, how are you going to use Metcalf? Said, we're going to get him the hell out of here. We're going to trade him. Jed York, the CEO of the 49ers, came out now that we don't have numerical figures to discuss, but he did make it clear. He spoke with the Associated Press in New Orleans, and he said, I know we want Brock Purdy to be here for a long time. We'll do everything we can to make that work. There's so much work before you get to that point. Obviously, it started at the end of the season to get this thing ready and get this thing right and get it back on track. There's no one that I respect more and trust more than John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to get us back on track. So confident in getting a deal done with Brock Purdy, and from the CEO of the 49ers also seems to be confident that they will get the thing back on, get the train back on the rail, on the tracks. Yep. And then Deebo Samuel, he recently did an interview with Bleacher Report, and he was asked, if you aren't in San Francisco, can you see yourself playing? He said, I could see myself in Denver. Bo Nix is playing really, really good ball right now. Their defense is outrageous. You got Patrick Surtain out there, who's, I would say, the best at this position right now, probably been for the past 2 years. I just think you need a couple more pieces, and it'll be what it need to be, and just have to get past Pat Mahomes every year. So Deebo seems to see himself as a potential piece that he alludes to the Denver Broncos needing, and be interesting to see if he does end up in Denver. And then lastly, there is a rumored report from, let's see, who was it here? Corey Woodruff of USA Today threw out the possibility. He said, the 49ers need more juice off the edge. They could look to Nick Bosa's elder brother as the solution. At this point in his career, Joey Bosa would be a much better complementary rusher opposite a superstar. So the idea is being floated out there that maybe the Bosa brothers are paired up together in San Francisco. What do you think that would look like, Will? And would you be happy to see that?
Well, I wouldn't be happy to see it, but I would say this. It's hilarious when I see these reports coming out or these speculations that they're going to try to pair him up with another heavy cap player in his brother. Look, Nick and Joey would be great to have on any defense. Maybe it'd be a little bit of brotherly love, and they'll say, hey, we'll give you the the brotherly discount, and it will come play together for a couple years to finish out our careers or whatever, or finish out one career. Doubtful is what I'm saying there. I don't think that any team is going to spend, $50-60 million on two guys. It's just not going to happen. It totally kills your team. So I'm out on that theory. I don't think it's going to happen. As far as Deebo Samuel, yeah, he is definitely on the trade block. If the Broncos have the ability to bring him in, yeah, it could make sense. I mean, it fits within Sean Payton's scheme offensively. You can put Deebo just about anywhere, but is Deebo the diva? And is he going to infect that locker room or cause problems? I don't know. I don't really care what the Broncos do with him. If they do bring him in, that does make the Broncos a very scary offense. And then lastly, Brock Purdy. Yeah, I don't think that there's any way that Brock Purdy doesn't stay a 49er, and he will probably get about a $55 to $60 million contract before training camp hits. So good work on the first Riley Road report. Now let's get back to Eric. Eric, what's happening, buddy? What's up next for us on Detroit Lions news?
Oh, let's see here. Well, the Detroit Lions have a new assistant coach, and he comes from the college ranks this time. So the Lions dip into the college ranks for the latest hire to Dan Campbell's coaching staff. The Detroit Lions coaching staff was depleted by departures, 8 of them, after the postseason loss to the Washington Commanders, with 7 assistants creating new branches on Dan Campbell's coaching tree. The process to fill all those spots is ongoing with notable outside hires David Shaw and Bruce Gradkowski. And now, according to Matt Zientz of CBS Sports, the Lions are expected to hire Iowa State assistant head coach and running backs coach Tyler Roll as an offensive assistant.
Interesting.
So I don't know what an offensive assistant entails.
As far as what their job description really is?
Yeah, like what group they would be helping with, or is that someone he would be grooming to be a new OC someday or something?
I would say that they probably do just about everything. They're there obviously to assist all the coordinators, all of the other offensive play callers and coaches. But let me pull down the description real quick.
Yeah,
it's a good question. So the offensive assistant will assist the head coach with all aspects of a sports program. They help recruit, they mentor, they foster emotional ties to the team. They oversee sports equipment, practice plans, schedules, skill development, designs coaching strategies, oversee public and media relations. But if we were to look at more so, what does an NFL offensive assistant do? Mm-hmm. This is what it says. An NFL offensive assistant coach is part of the coaching staff in the NFL, helping the team's offense with numerous responsibilities. This job requires extensive knowledge of the game and team structure, as well as experience in devising and implementing offensive strategies. Their primary duties include analyzing opponents. So they're probably preparing game tape, right? Preparing, scheme strategy, creating game plans or organizing practices, instructing athletes on how to improve their performance. They work in tandem with the head coach and the other assistants to develop strategies based on the team's strengths and weaknesses. The NFL offensive assistant coach must be able to manage and communicate with all the players effectively, as well as physically demonstrate moves and skills. So I look at it from this perspective too. So whether you want to say it's Dan Campbell or not, Dan Campbell's been through 3 or 4 knee surgeries now over the last few years. He probably doesn't move as well as he used to. So he's not going to be able to demonstrate things as much as he was before. having an offensive assistant that can come in and do these things is imperative, right? I mean, a lot of people learn by watching others do it. But this guy has to be ready to take over. He has to be able to take over a position, if and when needed. So it is a very instrumental position for the NFL. It's a way to add guys to your roster of coaches that can be a chameleon of sorts. They have to learn a little bit of everything, and then they kind of hone their direction later on when other positions open up. I think it's the same thing like the roster roulette funnel that I talk about. You also have the coaching funnel. You have to have guys ready to go. And if you don't, you're in a situation where we just lost, 8 coaches this year?
Yeah.
You need to have guys that can move up,
And I wonder if they're making a new position for him. This is something that they need to have a coach that can do multiple things.
Well, we've had assistants before. I mean, you have assistant every year, but maybe bringing in a guy in like this just to be another offensive assistant is a way to look at this guy and say, okay, I think you have superb leadership. I think that you have really good teamwork skills. I think you're a strong communicator. And I think your future is you could maybe be an offensive coordinator. Maybe you could be a tight ends coach. Maybe you could be a wide receivers coach. Whatever. Let's get you in the funnel now, get you working in an NFL program, and let's see where it goes from there. So good pickup by the Detroit Lions. So for the last half hour or so, I want to dig into, unless there's anything critical you guys want to get to. Do you have anything critical? No?
I'm just enjoying it, man.
All right. So for the last half hour, I want to get into Brad Holmes and let's kind of go through his 2023. We'll just call it a report. So this is going to be like substitute teacher day. We're going to watch a movie together to a degree. I'm going to stop it and play and we'll interact with it. We'll ask questions. But more importantly, I think going through this exercise is going to give, at least the fan base that follows this channel an idea of just who Brad Holmes is. Because one, I'm sick of seeing all the negativity. You can have your own opinion. That's cool. But I've seen what Brad Holmes has done. I've seen what he has said, and all of it has come to fruition. So if you think that this team is bad, in a bad way, if you think that this team is in trouble, we're not. And that's why we're going to go back to 2023. Let's see what Brad Holmes said in 23. How does it compare to now?
Obviously, start off by want to thank our ownership. Just to operate how we want to operate during the season. It starts with them, just their support, their belief, the resources they provide. It's not taken lightly. It's not overlooked. So much appreciation. Want to thank our players, just everything that they had to put into it, their sacrifices, what they had to do to get ready on a regular basis. I have the utmost respect and appreciation for what they do. And I told them, I'll tell y'all, I'll tell everybody, that's a special group in that locker room, and much appreciation for them. I thought Dan did a phenomenal job of preparing the team every week, week in and week out. I thought he did a phenomenal job navigating adversity when it did arise. I think from an identity standpoint, I do think that our opponents knew who they were getting ready to play when they were ready to face us each week. And, I think the role of Dan, he's a special leader, a special coach, and he's those things because he's a special human being. And just our whole coaching staff, really, just the countless hours that they put into from a preparation standpoint, teaching of players, developing players, the game plans every week. It's a lot that goes into it. So much appreciation to them.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it here for just a quick second. And the only thing that I'm really going to take out of this is the word adversity and how Brad Holmes was obviously commenting on the fact that Dan Campbell and the coaches, rolling through the adversity, having the team prepared. This was 2023. Where we stayed relatively healthy. We had some injuries. Frank Ragnow went down for a moment. Taylor Decker went down for a moment. We had some things creep up on us, right? Montgomery went down, I think, in week 5. I think Gibbs was injured at a moment. So we had issues. And at the end of the day, we were ready. And we continued to win. We 12-5 that season, 2 playoff wins, adversity. they were able to overcome. And so when you look at this season, I don't think it's any surprise that we were able to overcome all of the adversity of the injuries. That's all I wanted to say on that. I'll keep rolling.
This was the first season where after we kind of did a revamp of our medical and performance staff this year, and I thought they did a phenomenal job. I couldn't have asked more. We couldn't have asked more for everything that they did. And our pro scouting department, you know, the weekly advancement of our opponents, players being ready on deck whenever we had when we needed them. I thought they did a phenomenal job, and really our whole organization. I mean, it's too many names, it's too many people to name, too many departments to name. You know, our ops, wellness, video, equipment, you know, dining, security, just everybody. You know, everybody knows what our culture is, and they all know that it's an all-hands-on-deck effort. It's an all-hands-on-deck process. So just much appreciation, thanks for everything that they put into it. And, you know, our fans, you know, look, I don't think there's any debate that we have the best fan base in the world. Hands down. I don't care what anybody says, any sport. Look, they made Ford Field tough this year. They made it a tough environment to play, and even our road games, those road atmospheres, they made it, you know, just all due respect to all of our opponents. But I'll say this, we couldn't have asked more from them for what they did for us in terms of their travel, the sacrifices that they made. We were able to accomplish a lot this year, you know, division title, you know, home playoff game, playoff win, all just been over 30 years to accomplish all of that. So just really a credit to all the fans for everything that they did. They truly did their part. And so much appreciation. Their support is not overlooked, so we want to thank them. And look, this is what I want to tell really our fans is, look, it's only going to get better, okay? We're only going to get better, all right? I don't want anybody to think that this was a one-shot Cinderella magical journey that just happened. No, it's real, all right? This is exactly what it was supposed to happen. And I understand that based on history, from what's happened in the past, like, I understand you have a season like this, it's easy to feel like this was kind of a one-shot, magical, lucky, cute story, which I'm tired of hearing. It was none of that. It's easy to think that, but no, every move that me and Dan make, it has been made to sustain what we are building, all right? Every single move, and I'll say every single move we make and every single move we do not make is to sustain what we have been building. So it's real. Look, it's all to normalize what we're doing, all right? This is to normalize it. This is efforts to normalize it.
Okay, second pause of movie day. Brad is talking about normalization of the team because we just came from, you know, a very difficult transition, right? Coming from the Quintricia era, very difficult. You've got a lot of roster attrition. Over 85% of this team has been switched over. I mean, we didn't keep a ton of guys, like 5 to 7 that made the squad after that. And then now we're even down to a lot less that are still on this roster. But the main thing that he just said was this was not a fluke, right? What we just did in 2023 was not a fluke. We're going to be back in 2024. We know that Dan Campbell said, man, we had our shot, we blew it. But that wasn't true. We still had another shot. Matter of fact, this 24 season was even better. So trusting in Brad Holmes, you can do it just by listening to the man speak. What he's telling you at the end of this season and what he told us in the, you know, during the combine, during the draft time, you know, he's on the mic a lot less now. In the first 2 seasons, he was on the mic a lot more. That's because we were going through a really rough transition and the fans and Sheila, they wanted more of Brad Holmes. Not so much anymore. Now he's on just a few times a year. But if you're listening to what he's telling you, that this was not a fluke, they're going to do what they're doing to obviously sustain and build this team. Everything they did was intentional. And that's the guys they draft and the guys they don't. That is the guys they bring in free agency and the guys that they don't. There's a reason why he has not gone out and flushed out a big name player for big money. One, the team wasn't ready. Still probably isn't ready. And two, he'll get into more of it when he talks about resources. I'll ask questions to the guys here in just a few moments.
Places Dan's been, it was normalized. Places I've been is normalized. That's why we're here. We're bringing this to normalize what this is right now, especially at least put all the efforts into normalizing this. But we love where we're at. This is supposed to be expected. It's a standard. We love the window that we're in. We just got finished with year 3. We're still building. We'll stick to our plan. We'll continue to put all our effort in to improve each year, which we've done, in my opinion, and we'll just stick to that. And look,
facts. We have improved every year. Big facts.
Look, I think we all know adversity that will always come. All right, adversity will always come. It arose, but that's why we're built on grit. All right, because we'll be ready for it.
Hey guys, did adversity come in 2024? He foreshadowed exactly what was going to happen. That adversity was coming, and we were ready for it. And I think that, you know, when you have a GM that is this intentional, that is this intelligent, and he's telling us what's going to happen, but they're prepared for it. Yes, the grit factor matters, right? It matters because that's what the team is built upon and founded upon, and the way that our identity was created as a team, right? He's going to mention here in a few moments where he starts talking about more important things, retooling versus rebuild, and some other things. So we'll get into it here shortly.
Adversity, because it's going to come regardless. And that's why we're always preaching grit, grit, grit. That's what we're built on. And look, we had injuries. We had injuries to our defensive backs. Gardner Johnson had suffered a big injury. You know, credit to him. He did a lot to battle back to help us out in the postseason. Emmanuel Mosley, you know, he worked his tail off to come back from really his first real major injury, and got another one when he first stepped on the field. Bad luck, it happened, but that did open doors for others. I thought Vildor did a nice job when he was called on to step up. Ife Melifonwu, he had got his chance, and he did a really nice job to step up. But just talking to the fans, I just want them to know that, over the next few months, don't get spooked this spring by speculation or negative talk or, the entertainment news feed. Don't get spooked by that to not think that we can't build and sustain what we've been building, all right? Don't get spooked by that. And I totally get it. The next few months, it's a lot of speculation and it's a lot of opinions and people don't know what's going to happen. But, I just hope that but they know that every year we have not led them astray, Dan and myself. We've been very upfront and straight with everybody and said, look, again, every move is intentional. Every move that we make, again, every move we do not make is intentional.
Okay, so I want to break this down for a quick second. We are in the exact phase that Brad Holmes is talking about, the speculation. This is the speculation phase. This is the everyone has an opinion like they have a you-know-what phase. And look, I'm one of them, right? I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot to say. That's why I'm the motor mouth. It's no secret when he keeps intentionally telling us that everything he does is with intent. Everything that Dan and Brad do is with intent. Intentional to not draft or buy somebody in free agency or vice versa. And I think that it is also imperative to listen to what he's telling us when he says they have been upfront. They have been honest. And I've been trying to tell everybody this for a few years now. There's a reason why when I put out content that I'm saying something that is backed by what Brad and Dan have not only told us, but the history lesson here. If you just look at what they've said, if you remember what they said, and that's why I'm trying to bring it back to your attention now, when the next bit of content comes out for me, when I'm talking about free agency work, when I'm talking about draft, there's a reason why I hit 5 draft picks in 2023, and I hit at least 2 last year, Terrian and Baki. There's a reason for that. It's because of what Brad has said, what Dan has said, and then the history lesson that they've given us, the way that the roster is looking, the way the roster is looking in the future, the cap, everything. It all comes to a head, and you're able to kind of decipher a little bit of it, right? And try to make sense. We'll never know who Brad's talking to on the phone. That is all BS. We will never know what trades are happening or not happening unless it's being reported by somebody that actually has a credential. So pay attention to Brad. Pay attention to Dan when they speak, because they're not trying to lead us astray. In season, yeah, there's a little bit of gamesmanship. But let me start with you. I guess we'll start with you, Riley. When Brad has said these things every year, you know, whether it's combine or the postseason press conference, what is your general feeling when you listen to Brad? Do you feel he's being honest and truthful? Or, I guess, based on what you've witnessed now over the last 4 seasons, how do you feel that his communication is to the fans and the media?
I feel it's a lot like yours. I feel like it's very strong. I remember the press conference when he was made GM, and I remember thinking to myself, like, man, same thing with Dan Campbell. Am I just buying the bill of goods again? Am I buying what I'm being sold again? Because how many times have I believed things were going to change for the Lions and then they never did? With Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, man, you feel it. You feel what they say. Like, they mean what they say. Brad Holmes talks like a loving parent that's got like 30 seconds to say all of this stuff, and he's got to express it with the right sincerity and the right tone. He's got to get it all out because he's only got these 30 seconds to express all of his love to his kid. Every comment he makes, but it's also very intentional. It's also very deliberate. It's amazing how straightforward he is. And very much, yeah, man, if you read between the lines, like, they kind of tell you what they're going to do. So I'm extremely happy that he is the GM of the Detroit Lions.
You know, so I feel like he does things intentionally for a reason, and I feel like he's truthful to a varying degree. I don't think that he's untruthful, but I think that he does things with so much openness because nobody in the NFL really does it that way. It seems like it's all smoke screens and mirrors, especially this time of season. But when someone is actually being intentional and trying to give us the clues to what's going to go on with this team, well, being overly truthful kind of may steer people the other direction. Kind of gets them off your back. Well, he told us, you know, look, we've got to address the cornerback room. Well, Brad Holmes isn't going to take a cornerback this year, so we don't have to worry about that because he just told us he is. So if you use reverse psychology, which I feel like a lot of people around the league do, it's not working into your favor. That is why Brad Holmes has been able to leapfrog other teams in the NFC North and snake away, you know, some of the players that maybe they were going to draft, like Brian Branch from the Packers or Terry and Arnold. There's a reason why he's successful with that. So same question really to you, Eric. Do you feel that Brad Holmes' intent and truthfulness is helpful to our future success, and has he been intentionally truthful over the last 4 seasons? I guess as a whole, do you feel like he's just a truthful dude?
Well, I'm going to flip it on you guys. I have 3 names for you: Martin Mayhew, Matt Millen, Bob Quinn. When they had their press conferences, what did they say? Nothing.
All right.
They never said anything. It was always, if they gave a press conference at all, it was smoke and mirrors, a bunch of fluff, never made any sense. Just never gave you the direction of the team. When you watch Brad Holmes, he's open, he's honest, and he's not giving things away like, oh, we're going to draft this guy. But he tells you, this is our strategy, this is what we're doing, and he does it. And I love it that he's transparent. He's not being sneaky. He's not hiding things. He doesn't say one thing and do something completely different. That'd be like, I don't know, Bob Quinn drafting a cornerback at number 3 that never should have been drafted in the first round at all. Just you never knew what those guys were going to do. Brad Holmes, he has a direction, and he shows that he has direction, that he's not just taking whoever because his buddies tell him to take it. He's taking everything the staff tells him. Everyone has a part in this, not just, hey, it's what I say and that's it. So Brad Holmes, he's the best GM we've ever had, in my opinion.
Oh, I would agree. And I think that everything is intentional as far as how they draft, where they draft, when they draft, and the same thing for free agents. I think that when they came to Detroit, Brad Holmes probably had a, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, he probably had a plan for every year. But I guess what I'm saying is, typically in life, people ask you, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? What's your 15-year plan? I guarantee you that Brad had a plan. All right, well, this is the first year. This is what we're going to have to do. And then by year 3, I see us being here. And by year 5, I think that we're going to take this direction. And by the 5th draft, we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, where maybe the first 4 drafts we couldn't. And maybe year 5 in free agency, we may be able to do this a little bit differently because we couldn't the first 4. So I think that he had a bigger plan laid out. And I think that plan is now going to come to fruition. So let's keep on motoring through here on movie day with Rockhound Detroitlions.
And I'll even go back to, the past drafts that we've had. Every single pick, free agency, every signing, it is very intentional. So I don't want the fans' joy to be derailed. They should be proud of their football team because the fans have earned it and the fans deserve it. But, and also I want them to know that over the next few months, every move that we make, it's to win in December. It's not to win March, April, and May, which it's easy to do. You can, if that's your aim, you can win headlines. You can win March, April, May, but no, everything is intentional, and it may look strange. It may look like, well, why did they do this? Why? Trust me, it is to win in December. And so that's why we made the moves that we have made. And look, the reality is this. Look, everyone can't play here, all right? Everyone can't play for the Detroit Lions. And that's just a reality. That's just a standard that has been set. And look, I'll go back to the 2021 draft, all right? So
before he does that, here's what I'm going to ask the chat and the comments later. Did we win in December in 2023? We did. Did we win in December in 2024? We did. Did we win in January of both seasons? We did. We just didn't win our first playoff game of this season, but we got to skip a week. So it's like we won the wild card round because we got to skip a week. So again, everything Brad has done intentionally has led to the success of this football team. And he talks about headlines. And I know he's going to mention this in a little bit. But if you want to win headlines, the draft is the way to do it. And free agency is the way to do it. You make these big splash trades and you bring in some big name free agents. That is how you win headlines. But do headlines win football games? They don't. It's the guys on your football team. It's the coaches on your football team that win football games, not headlines. Danielle Hunter was a huge headline last year going to Texas. Did they win the Super Bowl? Nope, but they won the headline game. So if you're all about headlines, go ahead, do big stuff. Doesn't always work. We'll keep on going.
The 21 draft, each pick from that draft was very intentional. And the reason why I go back to that draft, a couple reasons. For one, it was 2021, all right? We just finished the 2023 season. So that's when you're supposed to grade a draft, not the day after a draft. So, but when you look back at those picks, and those picks were not welcome by many in this room. Dave, you wanted us to pick a quarterback. You didn't want us to pick Penei Sewell. People didn't want us to wait till the 4th round to draft a wide receiver. People didn't want to wait on a Derek Barnes to develop. But every single move was intentional and was made with intention. But also for reasons of what people might not say about, or what people might say about not sustaining. Look, they might say schedule. You might say, oh, we don't have all the picks. Look, back in 2021, we did not have multiple ones. We did not have multiple twos. We did not have 4 picks in the first 100, Now, we did have that, and we used those wisely. You guys didn't agree, but we used those picks wisely. But we had 1 extra pick in 2021. We had a comp third. That was Iffy Melifonwu. Carlos, I know you said that was a miss, but that was the only extra. That was the only extra pick. So what I'm saying is, that's not required to sustain what we built going forward. So, just want to make sure that the fans just know. Look, we always said we'll draft, develop, sign our own, build through the draft, and we're just living that right now. So. Just want to make sure the fans to stick with us. We got you. The fans have done their part. Keep doing your part. We'll keep doing our part. It's much appreciated. Again, it may look strange at times, but just take the marshmallow test with us, and delay some of the headline entertainment in March, April, and May, and really enjoy it in December, because that's why we're doing what we're doing. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Questions?
We talked to Dan last week, and he said the core is built here. Yes. And a lot of guys can evaluate talent in this league, but it's not just about bringing in talented guys. Now, they have to fit here. You just alluded to that, too, in your opening comments. What does that process mean? What does that mean? What does that player look like that's not a talented player, but fits what you guys have already built here and what you want to see moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I tell that to our scouts. We have to get past just looking for the most talented player. That's, in my opinion, that's the prerequisite of evaluation. That's who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's got the most height. That's very coherent thing to do. No, it's how do you find the right intangibles in a football player? And that's what's made us who we are. And that's what I was saying about that 2021 class. That was very intentional to find those guys that had the intangibles. It's not that, we waited to the 4th round to pick a wide receiver. No, we wanted St. Brown. He had the intangibles that we were looking for to set our foundation. And so, and look, a lot of those guys, they're eligible for extensions now, and a handful of them are, but again, it just goes back to what we build and being very intentional about our intangibles and what we're looking for in Detroitlions.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here, and I'm going to ask a question to the guys here. So this mentioning the 2021 draft, being intentional about Amon-Ra St. Brown and setting the stage for the culture, the identity, and, the beginning block, right? You're laying your first, or second or third block right now in the foundation. Nobody had Amon-Ra St. Brown as a game changer. Nobody. Everyone knew how good he was. They knew that he had some amazing skill. But he was passed over by, 16 other players, taken in the 4th round. But Brad knew that he was a hard worker. Brad knew what he did on and off the field and after practice. Brad had all those questions answered because they dig deep on these players. But in the very beginning of building this franchise, they had to start with the foundation. They had to lay the first brick. All right, we got our coach, we got our GM. And even before that, it was Sheila assembling her, community of advisors. Second brick is the GM and Dan Campbell. Third brick is your coaching staff. Fourth brick is now you're developing your draft board and you're starting to draft and find free agents that can help you get to a point of having a foundation to build on. So obviously the first couple of drafts, they had to do what they had to do, but they found a few key pieces. And I know that Full Slate Farms asked a question earlier, are we going to utilize this 2021 draft now to play the comp game? And out of that draft, Penei Sewell, huge game changer, right? Culture identity guy. He set the foundation. Amon-Ra St. Brown, huge culture identity guy. He also set the foundation. Derek Barnes took 3 years to finally come around, started to have a good season, got injured. Aleem McNeil, obviously a culture identity guy. Took him a couple of seasons to really start to show us who he can become. So out of the first draft, not only did he get 2 All-Pros, but he has Aleem McNeil, who may become, an All-Pro at some point, but I think he has a harder road to haul to get there. Levi, Efetu Melifonwu, and Derek Barnes are the only 3 guys that you can possibly play this comp game with. And maybe, but I'll expand upon that maybe tomorrow's show. But the reason why I'm mentioning these guys is because this was the intentional building of the team. So let me ask you, Eric, when Brad made these picks, and now that you're looking hindsight 2020, 4 years later, did Brad make the right moves?
Yeah, they say you can't judge a draft until 3 years later.
Right.
Man, A++. Brad knocked it out of the park on his first draft. Absolutely insane how good that first and second and third draft were. I think that he does an amazing job of bringing in the right type of people. And then after that, then he looks at the what they can do physically, what they can do, everything else, what they do on the football field. First and foremost, he puts, I guess you'd call it grit before he puts anything else on the board. If you don't have the grit, then you're not going to be drafted by the Detroit Lions. It's just not going to happen. And I don't think he's going to change the way he drafts. And like he said, he doesn't want to win the headlines in December. He doesn't want to win the headlines in April and May during the draft. You know who wants to win the headlines in December and April and May? The Chicago Bears.
Yep.
And guess what? They had the headlines in August too, when they went undefeated in the preseason and they celebrated it like it was the Super Bowl. And then they crapped the bed in the season. They start out okay and then just, I don't want to be the Chicago Bears. I don't want to be any other team. I want to be the Detroit Lions. They're building something special here. And that's why you're seeing all these other teams try to copy what the Lions have done. And it's just like when the Lions tried to be the Patriots. It doesn't work. You have to develop your own style. So that's what I hope Aaron Glenn is doing, is developing his own style, not trying to make it Detroit Lions East, because I have a feeling that Ben Johnson is trying to make Detroit Lions West.
Yep, the Detroit Lions. I call them the Lake Michigan West Lions. That's what I'm calling them. So Riley, same kind of question to you, buddy. Do you feel that Brad made the right moves, or did we need 6 edge rushers in 2021?
Yeah, we needed 6, maybe 7 of them. No, I'm so excited and thankful that the decision makers are who they are, because there I was wanting Justin Fields because I just wanted a new quarterback, right? And I was bummed when they took Penei Sewell. I admit it full on. But I saw the excitement. We all saw it. He's pounding the table. It makes sense, right? You have to feel like, you know what? Things are going to start working for me. If you're Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, and I would venture a guess that if they had the number 1 pick in the draft, maybe even at that time, I thought, Trevor Lawrence was going to be this stud. They might have taken Sewell at number 1. And I would venture that after a few years of him playing, even more so, that they would, in a redraft, if the Lions were the first pick, they'd probably take Penei Sewell number 1. So he fell to them at what, 7?
7, yeah.
You have to start feeling like, oh, this is going to work for us. He is such an important part of the team. And the way that, I think you're exactly right, Will. They map it out. This is how we're projected to be. This is what we're going to have to do. The steps we're going to have to take to get there. And we're making progress. We're right where we should be.
Yeah, he's checking off the boxes as he goes. So, one of the things that Brad said a few moments ago was talking about grading players and the criticism that comes along with it. And every year it seems like we get, all of the emotional takes right after the draft. It's part of the process. I get it. It's part of the entertainment factor. It's part of the media. But when we actually go back and look at all the drafts, which we've done in the past couple of weeks, we've looked at a few of the drafts and done a redraft. Well, Brad has done, and you can either agree or disagree in the chat, in the comments later. When you watch this later, let me know. Which drafts did you like the most? Which drafts do you feel Brad did his best work? Grade them A to C. I know we don't got any D's in there. Matter of fact, we probably don't even have any C's in there. But, grade them A to, whatever. And let me know from 21, 22, 23, and 24, overall, how did that draft work out for the Detroit Lions? And I can tell you without a doubt, his first two drafts were A+++. Last year, he probably could have done a few things differently, but I can't evaluate all these players until like 2027. I would probably give it a solid B- right now, only because maybe I would have done something different in the second round. In 2023, I mean, goodness, how do you not give it an A+++ with the players that we brought in? And like he said, there's only so many guys that can play for the Lions. There's only so many guys you can actually fit, on a roster to start. You only have, 48 or 45 guys, that start on Sundays, and you have 69 guys overall. It's tough every draft to find starting quality. And something I said the other day too is in the first couple of drafts, all these guys were starting for a reason. And I feel that a certain faction of Lions fans look at that and they say, well, man, how come in the first draft we had everybody starting? Like almost everybody started that we drafted. We didn't have a team. And the players that we drafted were better than the guys in free agency. That's why. And we didn't have any money, right? We had zero money in 2021. And we had a bunch of dead cap to purge. Hell, we still had Collins and Trey Flowers contracts, I believe, until 2022's offseason cap. So there was a lot of purging going on. So, Brad Holmes, in my opinion, he's done an excellent job. I'm not going to say, he didn't just go get an edge rusher because he didn't want to. It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense after bringing in Aiden. He had a definitive plan to do it. But what I would ask and implore everybody to do is go do the work. Go review the drafts. Go look at, do the work that I do and start grading and watching tape. It's easy to comment after the fact. But if you actually come to the table with a bunch of resources and information prior to the draft and you've done the work like Brad and the scouts have done, then obviously you're going to have a much better take other than just saying, I think we should have done this. You can't just say we needed or should have taken an edge rusher without backing it up as to why, who you would have taken it over, how would that affected the rest of the draft or free agency and the cap. Just one different pick can throw a wrench in everything. So I think that people really need to sit down and do the work. We'll keep going. We got about 12 minutes left of this. I understand if either of you guys have to jump off, just let me know and I'll try to switch scenes.
For the record, I like Sewell. I did like some quarterbacks at the top.
No, you want us to pick quarterback.
Not looking to the side, but regardless.
Make sure you're muted.
Speak to just some of the challenges that come with where you're at this point is different than when you took over, right? Like you do have to pay some guys. You do have to, you're
it's hard to hear the questions.
So how does that, I know you still have the plan, right? But how does that make things different in terms of how you approach
it's going to be the same exact process. It's going to be the same exact plan. We're going to be very strategic, very selective. We're going to look for the same type of players. Again, it doesn't need to be, I know I referenced, when we've had, multiple ones. And so now we're picking later back. Actually, that's exciting for me. That's like, man, it's kind of back to, I think, 21 draft. The other reason why I love that draft is like there was like no combine. You know what I mean? It was like you either had to know the film and pick the right players or not, and actually know the player and have the right intangibles where I think, back there you're picking football players. And we're always picking football players. It's just that when we pick football players high, y'all have bashed us, but we'll still continue to pick football players in the guys for us. So really it doesn't change. Will it be different? Yes, it will be different. It maybe not be as many high price external ads, but that's not required right now. So we'll just still keep sticking to our plan and go as normal. And I think it's proven that it's worked so far for us.
The fact that you have to pay your own at some point, you maybe just alluded to that. How does that impact what you can or can't do in free agency, or maybe even what you
I mean, look, it's one pot. it's one, it's.
So the question was, how does draft capital or overall salary cap affect what you can and can't do in free agency? I think is what he said, and now Brad's going to answer.
One pot, so you got to be very strategic of how those finances. That's what makes the league as great as it is. But you got to be very, very strategic of how.
The other question in there was extensions, and how does extensions, obviously, and the cap and everything together affect free agency. So keep that in mind, because we just signed a bunch of guys, re-signed, extended.
How that pot is divided up, or divvied up, but we'll be smart and we'll make the right moves. But it just changes the landscape a little bit in free agency. You got to think back, our first free agency, we didn't have any real resources to spend, and we had to be very selective and try to, find an Alex Anzalone or a Khalif Barnes and all those guys. I mean, a Khalif Raymond, but and then last year we had a little bit more resources, and we're able to get a Cam Sutton and a C.J. Gardner-Johnson. This year will be a little bit different, but we'll be smart.
Brad, you said you don't want.
You look at this football team, and it's a Final Four team.
Eric, I'll get to your question. Go ahead.
Yep, Final Four team. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, where do you think the team needs to improve so that they can take the next step and be Lombardi Trophy candidates potentially?
I mean, we look to improve every single year. I don't think it's like one specific area. I think that's when you kind of run into danger there, is when you think, you're good at something and you don't need to work on it anymore. So we'll always be kind of sharpening our tools in every area. And I don't think you can ever be perfect. There's no such thing. So we'll just kind of continue to look to improve in every area, and we will. And we've already started that process. And but again, where we ended up, it's expected. It'll be expected, heading in this year, like the way you framed that question, Super Bowl, that was a disappointment, that we didn't make it, and that, again, that wasn't man, we got lucky, it's what we expected, and fell short, but still accomplished a lot, but we'll improve in every area.
We'll talk a little bit about one of the leaders, Jared Goff, and his team. I mean, when we brought him in, he was probably one of the few people who actually believed that he can achieve this type of success. I mean, talk about what you saw out of him this season, any growth, or just the belief for what he's been able to do, and just his future here as well, if you started any conversations with that as far as with Jared Goff.
So the question here was about Jared Goff and what Brad Holmes or Dan saw in Jared, and what his success could look like in Detroit, and what they see going forward, if they had any conversations with Jared, obviously about extending his contract, and then Brad will answer now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we meet with all of our players, whether, a player that's eligible for an extension or a player that's an upcoming free agent. That's very paramount in our organization, is a communication standpoint. But, in terms of Jared, look, I've always had belief in Jared. You guys have always heard me that. I don't think, I don't know what more needs to be said from a leadership or performance standpoint, or what more he needs to do in that regard. But in terms of the belief, as always, I think I said this to you guys before, is that, he got drafted in 16 and, he wasn't a full-time starter, but 17 was his first year as a full-time starter, and he made the playoffs. And, got exited versus the Falcons that year, but the second year as a full-time starter, he went to a Super Bowl. And what I didn't understand why his career was defined after he went to a Super Bowl a second year as a full-time starter. And so then when he came to us, I always had belief. So him doing what he did this past year, or even the year before, it's not a surprise to us. I just know how he's wired. I know the talent he has. I know the leadership he has. I know his mental and physical toughness. I know what he's made about. And I think his peers and definitely his teammates recognize the same thing. So just happy that what he's done, and, just couldn't be more proud of everything he's achieved.
So again, this is 2023. talking about Jared Goff. Brad Holmes talked about his past and why was Jared defined by his second season as an NFL pro, making a Super Bowl and losing. Yet his first season, he was put in the last 7 games to go in and fail, but to get some reps, at the NFL level. And then he makes a Super Bowl as a second year full-time starter. And then he comes to Detroit. And everyone's bashing the guy. He's a bridge quarterback. He's not worth it. And that's because of what Sean McVay said and all the other media members that piled on. But this is 2023. He's talking about Jared, the belief that he had in Jared, the belief that Jared's going to continue to do great things. Jared comes out in 24 and has the best season ever of his career. So if you can't trust Brad Holmes, I don't know why. Because he sees this stuff in Jared, and it's coming to fruition. That's the whole exercise today. What has Brad Holmes said in the past that has come to fruition? And I think that you have to give this dude his respect for getting so many things right, because he gets a ton right. So we'll keep moving forward here.
Characteristics. You mentioned.
Go ahead, Justin. Well, Carlos, go ahead. And then Justin.
You mentioned the defense and some of the injuries that you guys dealt with. One of the popular beliefs I think out there is that the reason the defense it's improved this year, but it hasn't reached the elite level that the offense has, is because of the talent level discrepancy.
Yep.
Do you believe that there is a discrepancy in the talent level, and how do you close that gap?
I don't know about a discrepancy. I'll say this: it's not like if players have achieved more offensively, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't. Let me make sure that the guys we select on defense don't achieve this of what the guys achieved on offense. But I kind of see it a little bit different. You may look at some names that may look a little bit more appealing, names that y'all have clamored for us to acquire in the past. But I do think that our players on defense played well together, and they worked well together, and they were a resilient group. And I think we have a lot of good starters, and we have a lot of guys that have a lot of upside. We have a lot of young players on defense. And look, we play an aggressive style. We play an aggressive style. I think there's no question on our identity, but I don't really see like there's a big discrepancy of talent. It's just, we're just kind of working together. But it's a total team effort, Carlos. It's we don't look at defense different than we look at offense. We don't look at special teams different. We're trying to build a team, and I know everybody wants everything to be paired. You have a Pro Bowl pass rusher that double-digit sacks and 100 pressures. Everybody wants to pair the pass rusher with somebody. You have a D tackle that's was on his way before he got hurt to potentially a Pro Bowl season and sacks. You want to pair him with that guy. You have a promising young safety. You want to pair him with. Everybody wants to, and trust me, that's what we want too. We want the same thing. We want, not only the frontline depth of all 11 stars, but we want all the depth to be really, really quality. And that's what we strive to do. And sometimes when you strive to have really quality depth on defense, you might have to sacrifice some names. Because like I tell you guys all the time, you can get excited about what the depth chart looks like in April and May, in June. But I always think about, what's it going to look like in November. And so there's a balance when you want to add quality depth. And, sometimes you might have to have some guys that might not be as high-dollar players. But we have belief in our coaches, in terms of our development of our players. And a lot of those guys got better. So I'm not really concerned about it.
This is a big one, and I'm definitely going to ask some questions here to the guys. So this is a big one. Brad Holmes just completely told you what was going to happen in 2024 before it happened. He's talking about, Carlos Monarez, first of all, I can't stand the way that he's always been an SOL writer for Detroit. He always seems to be somebody that's always negative. I don't try to surround myself with negativity. I try to do as much positive as I can. But for him to ask the question, do you see a discrepancy between the defense and the offense as far as talent level? And Brad Holmes answered it perfectly, like, okay, these may not be some of the big high dollar guys, you know, that you've been clamoring for us to get. We don't have a bunch of high dollar guys on the depth chart, but when you look at the depth chart and you want really high quality depth, that's what a depth chart is for. You have your 11 starters and then you have your depth. He was more concerned about what this roster was going to look like in November. Not April, not May, not June. November. What happened in November this year? We started losing guys like dropping like flies. Had Brad Holmes gone into a different direction, and I'm just going to put it out there point blank because it's being talked about right now with Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, and others. Had Brad Holmes gone out last year and traded away 2 first-round picks or a first, a second, and a third, or whatever the case may be, and went in and brought in a Myles Garrett, a Danielle Hunter, a Trey Hendrickson, anybody. Well, first of all, Danielle Hunter would have been a 1-year rental, or he would have wanted a big-time contract, which is what he got. Brad wasn't going to do that. The depth would have been sacrificed. We wouldn't have had the depth. We wouldn't have had the players to lean on in November. So, Eric, what happened in November of this year, and how did Brad just completely tell us what he's doing is to build high-quality depth for a reason? So what happened in November and December and August and September and October?
Lots of guys got injured.
Yeah. and how were we able to rattle off 15 wins after all these guys go down?
Being true to what you were doing the whole time. And that's by bringing in the right types of players, being prepared ahead of time for this happening somewhat, and bringing in guys. Man, he was just a master of bringing in guys from other practice squads and I think by not panicking. And he said something earlier in his press conference. He said the marshmallow test. So while you were playing this, I had never heard of the marshmallow test. So I looked it up at what it was. And what they did is they put a bunch of kids in a room and they put out a plate full of marshmallows. And they told each kid, you can have 1 marshmallow now, or if you wait an undisclosed amount of time, which was 15 minutes, if you guys can wait a while, you'll get 2 marshmallows. Now, if you want the marshmallow now, there's no problem. You can take it as soon as you want. But if you take that marshmallow and eat it, I want you to ring this bell over here. So each kid had the opportunity to sit there for 15 minutes. They didn't know how long it was going to be, or they could eat the marshmallow right now and have 1 marshmallow. So they had the opportunity to either be hot and take it right now, or be cold and wait until later and get rewarded with double the prize. So this article went on to talk about how, like, when there's a new Xbox comes out, or a video game, or some new shoes, or something, that the price is really high in the beginning. But if you wait a couple of months, 6 months, 8 months, that same product is half the price, and you can get it for a much, much better price. And they went on to talk about how the people that decided to wait as children went on to have higher SAT scores. They went on to have better careers, lower BMIs, and a whole bunch of other things that it really helped them in life. And I think that Brad and Dan are cold marshmallow guys. They're willing to wait to get 2 marshmallows instead of 1. And that is what is helping them out. They're willing to wait it out. Like Dan said, we're going to take you out into the deep water, and we're going to wait until you can't swim anymore.
Right. You know, that's a interesting fact that you just brought up, and I didn't know anything about the marshmallow test. I didn't even think about looking it up.
I heard him say marshmallow test. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, I didn't know what it meant, but now, so I'm curious how many kids waited and how many didn't, if that fact is in that article. But more importantly here, I can't wait to see one of my new one of my new thumbnails is definitely going to be with a Marshmallow Man on it. I'm going to do something.
So another one would be the captain. I'm the captain.
I did that one last year. So
okay.
as I called him that, Captain, My Captain. It was also that movie, Dead Poet Society. I think it was what it was. But anyway, this is big because it's psychology, and I think that Brad and Dan eat and breathe psychology, and that's why bringing in the right people, the right players, the right coaches. They all have to identify with a certain similarity, right? And now the marshmallow test makes sense. Are you willing to work for it? Are you willing to work for it and then reap the benefits later? Or are you all about immediate gratification? Me, now, me, now. Because immediate gratification doesn't work in the NFL. That is the Bears buying a team, hoping they have immediate gratification. The slow progression or waiting for some gratification is build the team. Maybe it takes you 2, 3, 4 years, but then you're going to have 5 to 10 years of sustainability. So go out and hurry up and spend all this money, spend all these draft picks, all this draft capital, build a crazy good team, but maybe they don't work together. And he said that too in this press conference. They worked well together, right? Together. What did DJ Reader say this year on, what's that guy's name? Anyway, it was on a radio show. He said that, finally when the guys had some time after all the injuries, they said they had a few weeks to settle down and work together. Things started to work for them. They were finally able to go and be the defense that they were working so hard to become. They just needed a little bit of time to get in, to get in character and to sync together, right? They had to sync. I think it's huge. The marshmallow test, now that I understand what it is and the type of guys that they're looking for, I think that is a very big statement about how they're building this team. I totally forgot what I was gonna ask next, but it was within that, what he was just talking about. Maybe I'll talk about it later, but most importantly, working together. And I don't think that this team this year is able to do what they did without being able to work together, because you're constantly shifting new guys in. I mean, you brought up the point, Eric, too, about snagging 3 guys off of practice squads. That's hard. That's never done. But being able to be ready, and then those guys produced. A lot of those guys either got sacks or produced big time. I think it's incredible what they were able to do this season, last minute notice. So Riley, I totally forgot the question that I asked Eric, but what did you just take away from Brad Holmes in this marshmallow test, I guess?
No, you guys it's great, man. It's delayed gratification. It's a slow burn, right? But if I always look at it like, man, if you would have told me, I'll never forget when I was in a Target parking lot when the Stafford trade hit my phone. Justin Treese texted me, and I just remember like that was like a knife in the heart, because I saw it coming we all saw it coming. We were down in the dumps. If you would have just said, hey, man, in 3 years, Lions are going to be 2-time division champs back to back. They're going to get a number 1 seed. They're going to win playoff games, one of which will be against this Rams team that you just traded Stafford to. You're going to win 15 of 17 games. Man, I would have been like, okay, I'll pay whatever price. And I think Eric makes a good point. There's a buyer's market and a seller's market. And you just have to be patient. And I feel like as Lions fans, we've been spoiled where this last year or 2 years ago undid like 10 years of pain for me. It undid all of the Patricia days. I love this team so much. And the reality is I would, no matter how many games we win in the regular season, but the way that this team has been built has been very deliberate, and you can't get too impatient now. You can't jump too soon. You've got to just stay the course, I feel. And I don't know, do the Lions win 15 games next year? Maybe not, but I feel like they're going to be right there at the top of the division, because I trust Brad Holmes and I trust Dan Campbell, and it starts at the top, starts with those two.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So the question, now that I remember, it was Brad Holmes talking about pairing and how the media members are always, saying that Brad failed because we didn't pair Aiden with another top tier expensive defensive end. We didn't pair Kirby, or whomever, a safety, with another top tier safety. Well, that was wrong because they brought in Brian Branch. In his first year, he played nickel. He was meant to play safety. And in his second year, he goes to safety, and Kirby has the best year of his career. So it's intentional, yes. But Brad also has a plan now and a plan for tomorrow and a plan for, 5 years from now for these players. And you look, you can't keep, he was talking about extensions earlier. You can't keep everybody. Obviously, the cap is a very small pot. When you look at the gravity of the situation and how many players have to be re-signed, 51 count towards the cap. But simply talking about pairing these guys up, it sometimes doesn't make sense because the cap won't allow you. The draft capital that you're going to give up won't allow you because it ruins your plan. And I'm sorry, Brad Holmes has clearly put his plan in play and has been very successful with it. Probably 90% or better of his plan has worked in his favor. So the question is, when Brad talks about pairing a Pro Bowl type season, edge rusher with another one, and then the Lions, want that, but doesn't, it can't work right away if you want to address the depth. Again, I think I asked this a minute ago, the depth this year clearly showed us how important it was. So if we would have wasted those picks and if we would have wasted the money, we wouldn't have had the depth that we do now because the depth is extremely inexpensive and they're growing into really good football players. But now you might in your fifth year have an opportunity to say, okay, I have enough depth now. I'm going to nail a couple of guys in the draft and I might be able to pluck, one low grade diamond from free agency that isn't a top tier guy, but somewhere in between mid and top tier. And he's going to be the difference. Not that he's going to win a Super Bowl for us, but he's going to be the difference to kind of help round out the rest of the depth and a quality starter at the same time. So the question is, what will the team look like in November versus April, like he said, had the Lions wasted all those picks and draft capital and capital in general? And do you think that maybe this could be a season where we do pair? And do you think that pairing is even important? Eric, we'll go with you first. We'll try to do 30 seconds and then back to Riley.
Yeah, well, that's just like everybody's talking about Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson. I even saw Travon Walker here in the chat, to pair with Hutch. And I just don't think any of it's going to happen. I think that Brad is going to surprise you. I don't think he is going to pick the people in free agency that you're thinking of. It's going to come out of left field just like it did last year. He picked up Carlton Davis. I didn't see that one coming. And it's going to be players of need, but it's going to be people that you don't expect. That's who Brad is going to take with free agency. And then in the draft, depending on free agency, maybe we do pick up someone to go with Hutch. But I would think it would probably be an edge in the draft somewhere, whether it's the first round, second round, third round. That's what I'm thinking.
And I would agree. Riley, what's your thought?
Yeah, I just think back to Hutch saying, when he was asked about Myles Garrett, he said, I don't know if you can have that many dudes on your line. I think Brad Holmes is saying the best players on this team are players that I've drafted. I'm going to let the best players on this team that just won 15 games continue to be the best players on this team. I'm going to supplement it with the draft. Your team has to have high production on lesser contracts. And then you can go get a free agent that's choosing to come play in Detroit because he wants to win a ring. And then he's more of a Zadarius Smith than a Jamal Adams where he can actually come in and contribute longer. So I like I said, I trust his plan. I don't pretend to know. I feel like me saying what Brad Holmes is going to do would be like me going into a doctor's office and telling him how to perform surgery.
I do that all the time.
Quite literally. But from my understanding, you've been right. So
yeah, unfortunately.
But no, yeah, like I always said, if I got the breaking report that we've acquired Myles Garrett, yeah, I'd be happy as hell. But I just think that Brad Holmes, there's no reason for him to change everything he's been doing has been working. So
yeah, so there's one thing that I went over in the past week was the Eagles draft history, and there's no mistake there. The Eagles draft history clearly shows all of the players that just helped this team win a Super Bowl they drafted. There wasn't one big name, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys let me know in the comments and in the chat. There wasn't one big name on the Eagles roster that they went and paid for. Maybe Zach Bond and maybe Saquon Barkley. Saquon didn't have a huge game in the Super Bowl, but what he did this season was huge, right? So I guess you could say it wasn't a defensive player. It was Saquon.
Yeah.
Right? It was an offensive player. So that makes sense. I mean, Zach Bond had a really good season, and I don't remember how much they paid for him, but the point is the rest of the players were drafted, right? They weren't bought, and it's something that I've been preaching forever. But looking at the Chiefs, so I never really went through the Chiefs roster. The Chiefs won a Super Bowl in 1970, and then they didn't get back until 2020, and then they won 2020. They won 2021, right? 2023
and 24.
Hold on here. In 2024. No, hold on. Let me back up. So they won 2020, Chiefs over 49ers. No, they lost in 21. I'm sorry. That was Tom Brady. They lost. Yeah. Buccaneers beat the Chiefs. So they won 23 and 24. But if we go back and look at 2020's draft, or even a little bit before that, let's go 2017. They drafted Patrick Mahomes. They brought in Kareem Hunt. Some of these other guys, I don't even think are still on the team. But Patrick Mahomes, Tanoa Capsagon, I don't even know if he plays anymore or where he's at. But the point that I'm trying to make is they brought in Patrick Mahomes and Kareem Hunt, who clearly helped them win, a Super Bowl or 3 or 4, right? In 2018, they brought in Braylon Speaks, Derek Nottie, Armani Watts, Trayman Smith, Khalil McKenzie. Well, we know Derek Nottie helped them out, for sure. We know that. How about in 2019, they brought in McCole Hardman, Juan Thornhill, Kalen Saunders, Rashad Fenton, Darwin Thompson, and Nick Allegretti. I know for a fact that McCole Hardman, Nick Allegretti, Juan Thornhill all helped that team win in 2020. 2020, they brought in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Willie Gay Jr., Lucas Niang, L'Jarius Sneed, Michael Dana, and Thakarius Keys. Well, I know for a fact that Edwards-Helaire, Willie Gay, Lucas Niang, and Jarius Sneed, I mean, all those guys helped, but they helped them not only in 2020, but also in the future. How about 21? They brought in Nick Bolton, helped win in 24, 25, or 24 and played in 25. Creed Humphrey, Noah Gray, Cornell Powell, and Trey Smith. Well, I know that Bolton helped, Creed Humphrey helped. And then 2022, they had a boatload of picks. They brought in Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, huge, Sky Moore. Whoever's calling right now, I'm live. We're not taking calls right now. Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Brian Cook, Leo Chenal, good pick, Joshua Williams, Darian Kennard, Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, Nazia Johnson. Half of those people really helped this team win in the Super Bowl and also during the season. 23. They brought in Felix Uzoma, Rashi Rice, which unfortunately was hurt, but he really helped in 23. Wanya Morris, Chamari Connor, BJ Thompson, Keandre Coburn, Nick Jones. Again, all great depth players. Rashi turned out to be an animal. Uzoma, defensive end. How many snaps did he have this year? Uzoma. Does anybody know? Did he play a lot? Let's see. In 2025, in the final game, he had 2 combination tackles, or 2 tackles, 1 TFL. I don't know his snaps, but at least we know he played. I just don't know what he did. But overall in the season, he had 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 sacks on the season. So drafting Felix Uzoma at the end of the first round, defensive end, number 31, didn't help him a whole lot. 3.5 sacks, if you think that's, pushing you over the edge, I would disagree. Xavier Worthy in 24, Kingsley Sumatiaya, Jared Wiley, Jaden Hicks, Hunter Norzad, Kamal Hayden, CJ Hansen. Kamal Hayden, great depth piece, going to be a great DB. Hunter Norzad, I think he played this season. I don't know how much. Kingsley Sumatai, I think he got injured, if I'm not mistaken. Kingsley. Let's see. Yeah, Kingsley, I don't think he played a whole lot this year.
The BYU kid.
Yeah. So the point is a lot of the players on this Chiefs Super Bowl dynasty, this dynasty team, they drafted these guys, right? The Eagles drafted these guys. There's a reason why it works. Let's keep going with Brad. I know we've got a few minutes left here. Again, if you guys got to jump, just let me know.
I want to ask you about the concept of loyalty. I think it's kind of been a tenet of your tenure here, just the way you stick with guys through, maybe some rough spots, even down to your practice squad guys often stick through this roster for a full year. In his postseason comments, Dan was talking about just not getting emotionally attached to guys as you kind of reach these higher levels. So I'm wondering, as a GM, just your balance of, really believing in guys, knowing they're Lions guys, but knowing, there's an opportunity to maybe get better, and the importance of new blood in pursuing a continued, success and higher goals.
So I think that was Justin Rogers. And it's funny, I didn't hear this before, but he just made the statement about, or the question, what are you going to do with the future, guys that you've got now on the roster, and being emotionally attached. What do you do about being emotionally attached to these players? Are you able to move off of them? Are you able to get the new blood in and not worry about being emotionally attached? And didn't I just say this the other day? How you can't be emotionally attached to players like Kirby Joseph. Love the dude, phenomenal season, great football player. If you're, if you're like me and if you're into the stock game and you want to trade your stocks, you're not going to trade them when they're low. You're going to trade it at the highest level possible. They bought low in the draft on Kirby. His stock is through the roof. Why wouldn't you try to push him out, and get another second round pick where there's a ton of defensive tackles and defensive ends and a safety of the future? Because Brian Branch isn't going anywhere, and they're not going to be able to keep both. So I'm glad that I just noticed that he said that, because emotional attachment, you can't be emotionally attached. You have to be business-like in everything that you do. So let's hear Brad's answer.
Yeah, that's a fair question, Justin.
It was Justin.
Look, I think that comes down to the communication aspect that I was speaking to prior. Look, we don't believe in handouts. We're a culture of accountability and a culture of earning it. And our communication with all our players is there's going to be competition. Even conversations that we had with guys that we want to come back, we tell them all the time, there's going to be competition. I think those guys understand that. So, and that's what we do. The best person, it's a meritocratic approach in terms of, the best is going to be the best is going to be number one, the second best is going to be number two. And I think our players understand that. And I think our players respect that. Me and Dan are always honest about that. So, we don't undermine or overlook the contributions that they've put in the past. And yeah, there's a little bit of emotional attachment because we've seen how those guys have grinded over the years, but they're well aware that we're in the business of improving and upgrading and adding competition. And that's what makes teams better, is better competition.
Right. You said at the start of your comments that people shouldn't view this as a one-shot Cinderella magical run. Have you sensed that from people? Because everything, it seems to me now, it's like Super Bowl or bust for the Lions. I don't think, unless you're hearing it from somewhere else, do you think people still wonder about the authenticity of what you've built here?
No, I don't say that. I just don't want anybody to be worried about that, because I do know that, you go from not making the playoffs to, obviously, and that's what we do. The best person, it's a meritocratic approach.
I don't know what just happened.
The best is going to be the best. The best is going to be number one. The second best is going to be
all right,
number
we just
two.
rewinded
I think
just
our
for a
players
second.
understand
We'll keep
that.
going.
And I think our players respect that. Me and Dan are always honest about that. So, we don't undermine or overlook the contributions that they've put in the past. And yeah, there's a little bit of emotional attachment because we've seen how those guys have grinded over the years, but they're well aware that we're in the business of improving and upgrading and adding competition. And that's what makes teams better, is better competition.
Right. You said at the start of your comments that people shouldn't view this as a one-shot Cinderella magical run. Have you sensed that from people? Because everything, it seems to me now, it's like Super Bowl or bust for the Lions. I don't think, unless you're hearing it from somewhere else, do you think people still wonder about the authenticity of what you've built here?
No, I don't say that. I just don't want anybody to be worried about that, because I do know that, you go from not making the playoffs to, being in the NFC Championship. And I can see, again, like I said, based off history, I can see the human being and the naturalness of, one could think that. But I just want to just reassure the fans that, no, what you saw this year is real. It wasn't some magical thing. Stone, you had a question?
There's a perception out there that you guys are 1 year ahead of schedule. When did you realize that perception is wrong and that you're good enough to do it now?
I never. I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember when we first got here, everybody was wondering kind of how long this was going to take. How long is this going to be? And I remember I used the word retool, and I got killed because I probably should have used the word rebuild. But they were wondering how long the build's going to take. And I never wanted to put a time stamp on it or a time anchor on it, because I said, look, we're just going to do our job, roll our sleeves up, and work to improve every single day. And that's what we did. So it's hard for me to say, yeah, we are ahead of schedule, because I don't know what that original time stamp should have been in the first place. But I do know we love where we are at, and I believe we are at exactly where we're supposed to be.
Brad, a lot of players after the game talked about how using that loss as motivation going forward, coming up short. I'm just curious, does that show up?
Okay, quick statement on this. So I mentioned this the other day because I was listening to this, how the difference between a retool and rebuild. And Brad used the word retool, and he got, just killed by the media for using that word. And he meant rebuild, because this was never a retool. And when you look at teams like the Chiefs, when you look at teams like the Eagles, when you look at, other teams around the league that seem to have, really good squads, the Packers, the Vikings. I mean, there's plenty of teams around the league. You can look at any top 15 team from this past season, outside of the Commanders, I would say. They didn't rebuild, right? They just retooling from year to year. And I would say that some years are different. Some years you may have to get a few power tools, right? Some years you may just have to get a few hand tools, a couple wrenches, maybe a couple screwdrivers. Brad needed everything. He needed an entire war chest of tools. Everything from the vacuum on the wall to the circular saws to the power saws, he needed it all. And so we're still rebuilding. But I would say that the true rebuild probably stopped after year 4. And now we're probably in this progression of retooling roster over roster, year over year. And so when fans look at this and they say, but man, we had such a great roster in 2023 and we had a shot at the Super Bowl. Yeah, we were probably early. We were probably way early for making it that far. But you know what? It all worked. Things aligned. We had a lot of luck at times. We had some phenomenal athletes that we drafted in 2023 that really helped this team win. And so then everyone's thinking in 24, man, it's all in. It's Super Bowl or bust. You've got to cash in all your chips. Yeah, not according to Brad. That's still our plan, is to continue to rebuild and then get into that 5th year. There's a reason why these guys were extended a few more seasons. Now, I do believe it's a little bit more of retooling. You've done the work through 4 drafts that has given you enough picks to address the offense and the defense. You've gone through free agency. You've been very smart with your cap. You have plenty of dollars this year, and you have plenty of draft assets. Now you can probably be a little bit more loose if you really wanted to, but I'm expecting Brad to be smart. So, again, I'm going to drive the point that retooling versus rebuilding, big difference. Rebuilding takes a long time. And a really good GM and a really good team, they're probably always in that mindset of, I don't want to have to rebuild again, but I'm going to approach it from the standpoint that I've got to build my foundation over everything else. And when I can leap up and go out and grab a game changer or spend a couple of early picks by screwing some picks later in the future, then that's what we're going to do. So it'll be interesting to see what Brad does this year. We'll see if he's in the retooling phase or if he's going to continue doing what he's been doing. All right, a few more minutes here, and then we'll wrap it up.
In your work at all, do you motivated by that loss? And as a GM, I guess, how does that translate into your work?
Yeah, it does. I'd say it's times even, last year when it got really dark, we were 1-6, I was just like, man, like, just watch, like, just watch, like, we're going to get better. And coming up short, it is fuel, and it is going to be another, just watch. Like, again, like I said, this wasn't a Cinderella journey. Like, we're going to do what we have to do to make sure that we're going to, prove it and earn it. It is fuel that I use for myself, and I'm a pretty self-motivated guy. That I think I am. I don't really need a lot of extra fuel, but when stuff like that happens, I think it's very human to it drives you to another level.
Brad, would your evaluation change from regular season on what you need for next year to playoff afterward? Is there a different evaluation that you had at the end of the season to end of the season against San Francisco, which you played the best team in the conference? Are your evaluations changed? Like, I'm asking, does the playoff run give you more perspective on what you have and what you need to get over that last hump?
That's a fair question. Not really. I've always have a good sense. Like I say all the time, my job is to have a foot in the present and a foot in the future at all times, and that's what I pride myself on doing. And so, regardless of how sunny or dark things are, midpoint in the season or late in the season or in a playoff run, I'm always looking for, this is what we need to do right now, but this is what we also have to do in the future. And that really doesn't really change, really.
With the NFL draft coming to Detroit, what does that mean for this community and for the non-Detroit community to have a window into what's Detroit look like?
Yeah, I'm excited about having the draft. I've always one of the things when we moved here, I was shocked downtown Detroit. Like, I love downtown Detroit. I think downtown Detroit is ideal to host a Super Bowl if the weather permitted. Like, I just think it's an awesome downtown. It's one of the better ones that I've been around, and that's why I love the fact that us hosting the draft is going to give, hopefully not only Detroit but the world a glimpse of kind of what our city is all about. And, and hopefully us hosting the draft means something, because that's what our team has been built upon, really, is the draft and through the draft. And so I think it's going to mean a lot on a lot of different levels. But I'm just excited that, our city is going to get the recognition and the world's going to see. I just know that we're picking later, so they're going to be waiting to see if our pick, and if we trade out of the first round, then I'll just send a memo.
Right now, first, he was kind of introspective at the end of the season when he did his end of season press conference here. Have you talked to him, or are you worried about retirement at all with him? And then two, you've always been sort of like a feed the beast guy, right? That offensive line has been really, really good for you. You have a couple of free agents there, right? Those injuries, Decker last year was contract. Just how important is it to continue stacking that position?
It's extremely important. Extremely important. And look, Ragnow, it's only one of them on the planet, in my opinion. So, but I have so much respect for him and for everything that he goes through and fights through that, I'm just respectful of his time and his thoughts. And, we're not going to, pressure him to do anything or make any moves, but the communication will be diligent. It'll be thorough. It'll be respectful. But just that's what our team is. I mean, our offensive line, us being able to, protect the quarterback and run the football like we do, it's extremely important. And so that's definitely going to be one that that'll be an area that will not be overlooked. As good as it has been in the past, just those points that you've raised, it's definitely going to be a point of emphasis still.
Brad, you were talking about that.
Eric, Sean, and John. One more question about the draft. obviously when you made the picks last year, that was probably the most criticism that you received out of the previous 2 draft classes. And you see what they were able to do. It might have been your best draft class. Like, as you're seeing those guys progress, playing the roles that they're playing, how did that make you feel? And how does it make you feel when you make a decision that isn't well received by everybody, but still standing on your 2 toes and going forward? I mean, just making
By everybody or you included?
No, I mean, just anybody. I ain't really have I ain't say too much today, did what they did. So. But just going forward and picking those guys, getting them criticism and going forward as well.
Yeah, well, you look, I'm not up here to give I told you so's. You know, I will say that I told you so was when we selected a player, is that, you know, we'll always, as long as Dan and I are convicted in selecting these players, you sleep like a baby. And we slept like a baby after we selected those players. And, you know, all the criticism that came and transpired the day after the draft or, you know, the week after the draft, it's always, you can't be a prisoner of the moment. You know, you can't let that affect you. You just gotta go through the post-draft storm, you know, and kind of just weather through it. And just like I told you guys, you know, after the draft, I said, look, OTAs will be here soon. People forget about the draft. Training camp will be here soon. People forget about the draft. But me and Dan had all the confidence in the world on those players. They did what we expected them to do. You know, those players that we selected, those were our favorite players in the draft. You know, I know it was a big thing about like tight end. You know, yeah, I mean, I think it's been on record that Sam Laporta was our #1 tight end. No, he was one of our favorite players in the entire draft. You know, so when you have that kind of conviction on players, you can sleep good. And look, you know, like I said about grade the 2021 draft, like grade that. Like now the guys have developed. You know, guys may have had injuries early, come back, like that's where you should grade guys, not right after. And I told everybody, look, they may not understand, they may not feel great about it right now, right after the draft, but I told them that they'll like it when football starts being played. And I want the fans to always know that when we have a draft, we have free agency, we acquire players, we didn't forget. Like we didn't forget how to draft. We didn't forget how to acquire players. We didn't forget how to be strategic and selective in our process. Like we didn't forget, but you know, that's not entertaining to write about that stuff. Entertaining for the criticism. Oh, that's a D, that's an F. Oh, man, what are they doing? That's entertaining. It's clicks, and I don't undermine that. I don't undermine whether it's free agency, draft. I don't overlook. It's the entertainment business, and I don't overlook the entertainment of, you know, fans want to, you know, click on the stuff it's newsworthy. You know, so, you know, saying that, man, the Detroit Lions, they're very intentional, very careful and selective with their picks, and these are, but that's not gonna get the clicks, you know. But I'm very happy for what those guys did, and they did what we expected them to do, and even more excited as they enter year 2 because those guys will be better.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. You guys can go watch the last 7 minutes or so of that interview with Brad Holmes. I will put the link in the description. But this last bit, Brad talking about clickbait, right? Talking about clicks. Brad mentioned that clickbait and newsworthy media, that is kind of the focus between now and the draft, and even in, you know, free agency and kind of the entire season, to be honest with you, that there's an entertainment side to this business. Honestly, maybe even why my media gets less clicks or whatever, because I'm not giving you garbage entertainment. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not an entertainer. I don't sit here with a top hat and a, you know, cane. I'm not dancing around, right? That's not what I am. I'm giving you factual data that is based on knowledge, hard work, and the facts of the business. And my intellectual concepts, the things that I bring together and bring forward, you know, maybe not all media likes it because I push back against what has been comfortable, and I'm okay being uncomfortable. I push back against the norms. I don't want to see where media is now today There's so much fake crap out there. It makes me sick. And not just political stuff, but there is. I mean, I can't even tell you conversations that I've had with people that they say, you know, did you see this or that or this? I'm like, did you realize it's fake? Like, did you even vet the source? Did you vet the article? You didn't. So I dig deep. I get underneath the sheets. I try to find the real information. My whole goal in starting this venture, obviously, was to rehab after, you know, the cancer and get through my pod therapy. But my focus has always been the truth, the honesty, and the transparency of media. Being an independent media, I feel that we have to have a certain level of responsibility and respect, not only for what the insiders are doing, what the other media members are doing, but I think that there's a bigger purpose here. I think that having transparency, it's kind of been lost in media because everyone is about clicks. That's how they get paid. That's how the mothership gets paid, is clicks. But the other side is negativity. And I mean, you tell me, why do we need to sell negativity and not positivity? And I think today's been a fairly positive show. There's a certain approach to this. I think very few people get it. I think that very few people respect it. I think that there are some entertainers in the Lions content creator world that are only there to make money off of you. Hell, I turn off ads, right? It's not about that for me. If you enjoy what I do, you'll like, you'll share, you'll subscribe. If you want to be part of the Rockhound Cancer Foundation, you'll donate. You'll ask me how you can help. I'm a bad person at asking for those things. I just expect that if people want to get involved, they will. And my door's open. Trust me. I said it the other day. I need help. I need more help to help the Cancer Foundation do what it needs to do. But tell me why we have to sell negativity and not positivity. I think that there's a certain approach. I think that there's, again, very few people that get it right. And in my opinion, I think that, you know, Mitch Albom, Dave Burkett, Tim Twentyman, Justin Rogers, to name a few, they get it. They don't, look, I've been reading Justin stuff recently because I subscribe to him. And I would definitely subscribe to him. It's worth it. The $8 or $150, whatever you want to spend. Those guys get it. And I recognize their intelligence. I recognize their commitment to doing it right. And there's a reason why they're at the top of the food chain, because they get it right. So it may take a little bit longer for me to grow because I'm trying to get it right. But at the same time, I'm way ahead of where I ever thought I was going to be. And that's also because of good people like Eric and Andy and Riley. And anybody that's been a part of this channel, all the guests that I've had on this channel. There's a reason why we try to do it a certain way. There's a reason why the guests I bring on also do it a certain way. So I'm going to leave it with that. Brad recognizes the game within the game. He recognizes that there's going to be a lot of crap printed, and he's not going to fall for it. And hopefully Lions fans won't fall for it, because this channel is going to try to give you the truth, the transparency, and the honesty about what's really going on. So I'm going to wrap it up. Final 30 to you, Riley, and then to you, Eric, to wrap us up. You're muted, Riley.
Sorry, guys. I was dialed in so much to the Brad Holmes presser, and then just captivated with Will's comments. Yeah, it's a great channel, great show. We've seen a lot of people in the comments today talking about, maybe you just found it. You're welcome here. You know, it's not my show, but I'm damn proud to be a part of it, part of this community. We love the Lions, and just so thankful for Will and everything he does, and appreciate him and Eric letting me hang out, and all you guys for letting me hang out with you guys today.
Well, hey, you're part of the show, buddy. I appreciate the first segment of the Riley Road Report. When's our next segment out? Is that Friday?
Friday it is. I'm gonna be working on it in between now and then. So Friday, come take a stroll with me. We'll be back for more Riley Road Report.
Do we know what division we're doing, or are you going to keep it a surprise?
You know, I might keep it a surprise.
Okay. All right. Now, Eric, man, your thoughts on today's journey through Detroit Lions. Riley, we'll catch you tomorrow, right? You've got I think you had to work today, don't you? Or are you off today?
I've got the day off. I'm going to go film a video with Matt Foxcroft from Matt's RV Reviews. So we'll do that. But otherwise I'm off today. So
beautiful. That way you get to rest up. All right, Eric, your 30 seconds or so on today's show, today's content, and what you believe in Brad Holmes or the Detroit Lions.
Here's my 30 seconds. I want everyone to do the marshmallow test. Are you hot? Are you cold? Let me know tomorrow. And I'm already working on a topic for tomorrow, and it was hot in the chat, and that is Marcus Davenport, and whether you think we should re-sign him, whether it was a waste of a free agent pickup. What are your thoughts on Marcus Davenport? Let's talk about it tomorrow. And that's one thing I'm going to bring up tomorrow is Marcus Davenport and whether we should bring him back or not.
I love it because there was a new name that I haven't seen in here today talking about, some of the struggles our defensive line has had. And I would say that, I did a video on Marcus Davenport and I put it in the chat. Now I can't figure out where I put it. But I put it in the chat. So go check it out because the thing that I had on Davenport, and obviously I don't want to give away anything about tomorrow. I don't think that he was, you know what? We'll save it for tomorrow. I don't want to ruin any of Eric's segment. You'll get my opinion tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. So, all right. You can check the video out if you want. It's in there. Just search up Davenport on the channel under videos. Look, here's my final take. Brad's doing it right. He's been doing it right. We're not all going to agree, and that's okay. I appreciate and agree to disagree with all of your opinions in the chat if they differ from mine. I don't always agree with Eric. I don't always agree with Riley. I don't always agree with everybody. I feel like I'm a fairly, agreeable individual. I get along with everybody, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have my firm beliefs in things. And what I see where this team has been my whole life and where it is now, I mean, you can't even really compare the two. They're not even close. Yeah, we had some amazing times with Barry Sanders. We had some amazing times with Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson. But we've never been able to really put it all together since I've been alive. And that's what these guys are trying to do. They're trying to put it all together, and they're trying to bring back football to a football city. This isn't a baseball city. It's not a basketball city. I would say it's a hockey city for sure, but it's also a football city before that. We always were a football city, always have been. Go back and look at, many years back, I think it was in the 20s or the 30s or something that we had this amazing trifecta going on in Detroit. It's an interesting city. It's a city that's thriving to Brad Holmes' point. It's an amazing city. It's one of the better cities he's been in and been around. And Detroit is on a comeback. Detroit football is on a comeback. And Rise and Grind Morning Show is on a comeback tomorrow. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Detroit Lions will